Hey everyone, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy the audiobooks, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support us further, consider becoming a Patreon member. As a member, you'll gain the ability to request the next part of a novel audiobook I've uploaded, depending on your Patreon tier.
The few of them placed the old lady on a straw mat in the backyard. Fortunately, the backyard of their house was big enough. Otherwise, they might not be able to fit a leper and still maintain their distance. What should we do now? Gu Xiaoshan looked at the old lady on the ground and asked. Go wash your hands first, Gu Jiao said. The three of them washed their hands with clean water and acacia. Then, Xiao Lulang entered his room and wrote a prescription. Gu Jiao stood behind him and asked softly, What's this? Although Gu Jiao had inherited the host's memories, the host could not read, so she did not recognize the words from this dynasty. A prescription, Xiao Lulang said. What is this word? Gu Jiao pointed at the first word on the prescription. This? Xiao Lulang read it out, wolfberry root bark. And this? Gu Jiao continued pointing. Sephora root, catnip, wild ginger. Xiao Lulang recited the prescription according to where Gu Jiao was pointing. Gu Jiao's expression was very serious, as if she was really trying to read. Although it was a little inappropriate, Xiao Lulang did not think too much about it. Why do you have a prescription for leprosy? Gu Jiao asked in confusion. Xiao Lulang paused and said, Back then, my brother was also infected with leprosy. A barefoot doctor gave him an ancestral prescription, and I saw with my own eyes that my brother's condition improved after drinking it. The host had accidentally heard him mention that his brother had leprosy. The host was stupid and did not understand what leprosy was, so she did not take it to heart nor mention it to anyone. Feng Lin knew about this. It was because Xiao Liulang's brother had leprosy that he was despised by the villagers. That was why he left his hometown and came to Clear Spring Town to study. On the way, the two of them bumped into each other by chance. After asking his identity, Feng Lin realized that he was his childhood neighbor. However, Feng Lin's family had moved away back then. After not seeing each other for many years, both of them had changed a lot. If he had not matched his name to his household register, Feng Lin would not be able to recognize him at all. Since he'd gotten better, why did he pass away? Gu Jiao asked. Xiao Lulang lowered his eyes and said, the news of him contracting leprosy leaked out, and he was taken to Leper Mountain by the soldiers. Not long after, he died of his illness on the mountain. So that's how it was. Gu Jiao nodded and said, Is this the prescription for your brother's treatment back then? Xiao Lulang nodded. Her symptoms are very light now, similar to my brother's back then. If she's treated properly, she might be cured. Gu Jiao had already understood the prescription. It was certainly indeed the right prescription, but it was slow to take effect and could only delay the development of leprosy. It would be a little difficult to cure it entirely. However, Gu Jiao did not say anything. Feng Lin took the prescription. I'll go get the medicine. Xiao Lulang reminded him, remember to go to a different medicine hall. Feng Lin paused for a moment and suddenly understood. Got it? They could not let anyone see that this was a prescription for leprosy. Otherwise, they would be exposed. I'll go too, Gu Xiaoshan said. What are you going for? Feng Lin did not want to go with him. Gu Xiaoshan raised an eyebrow. I'm keeping an eye on you so you don't report it to the authorities. Don't think I hadn't heard you. This fellow was just urging brother-in-law to send sister to Leper Mountain as well. Feng Lin rolled his eyes. If Xiao Lulang had not touched the old lady, he would have reported it to the officials. However, Xiao Lulang had already touched her. If he reported it to the officials, Xiao Lulang would be arrested along with the others as well. Regardless, Gu Xiaoshan stood firm, so Feng Lin had no choice but to bring him along. They could not take the ox cart. It would be dangerous if word got out. The two of them went to several major medical halls in town on foot. About 2 hours later, they had brought all the herbs and even a medicinal jar. Gu Jiao took the herbs to the kitchen to simmer. While waiting for the medicine, Gu Jiao asked Xiao Lulang, Why are you back? I heard that Gu Dashun has moved to the dormitories. Xiao Lulang told Gu Jiao about the collapse of their dorm. As expected, Gu Jiao thought to herself, but she looked a little surprised. Fortunately, you're fine. Xiao Lulang gazed at her deeply. The backyard was too cold. Gu Jiao tidied up the grain hut, moved a bamboo bed in, and spread some cotton on it. It could barely pass for a bed. You guys go out. I'll feed her, Gu Jiao said to them. Sister, be careful, Gu Shaoshan said worriedly. Don't worry, I know my limits. Gu Jiao sent them out and discreetly took out the small medicine box hidden in the basket. Xiao Liulong's judgment was right. This patient was indeed in the early stages of leprosy. Moreover, hers was a bacterial type. There was little skin damage, and it was less contagious. As long as she was treated for her illness, she could recover completely without any complications. Her fainting was not caused by leprosy, but by fatigue. Her clothes were ripped and her shoes were worn. Gu Jiao could not help but think about the soldiers she met in town. Could it be she's the patient who escaped from Leper Mountain? After the old lady regained consciousness, Gu Jiao gave her chlorobenzene sulfoxide and rifampin from the medicine box. In addition, she added a special medicine from the research institute. As for the bowl of herbal medicine, she also tried feeding the old lady some, but she seemed to especially dislike bitter medicine and spat it all out with a look of disdain. Old lady, where are you from? Gu Jiao inquired about her background so that she could send her back safely. In the end, the old lady looked at Gu Jiao calmly, snorted, and fell asleep. Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao packed her things and came out. She went to the backyard to wash her hands first. Sister. Gu Shaoshan, who had been waiting in the backyard, went over to her. What took you so long? The old lady drank the medicine slowly, so I had to feed her for longer, Gu Jiao said casually. Gu Shaoshan looked around and asked softly, Sister, can she really be cured? I heard that leprosy can't be cured. Gu Jiao smiled faintly. Don't worry, it can be cured. Gu Shaoshan had never heard that leprosy could be cured, but for some reason he believed his sister when she said this. If sister says it can be cured, it will definitely be cured. It was getting late, so it was time for Gu Shaoshan and Feng Lin to go back. Before leaving, Feng Lin secretly said to Xiao Lulang, Brother Xiao, I know you're a righteous person and can't bear to leave her in the lurch, but I still have to remind you that leprosy can't be cured. Take advantage of the fact that no one in the village has noticed and send her away when she wakes up. He could not hold it against Xiao Lulang, because it was precisely this spirit of his that led to Xiao Lulang saving him from the great fire at the courier station without even knowing who he was. Brother Xiao is simply a chivalrous person at heart. Also, pay attention to that evil woman. She interacted more with the patient. In case she has a name, Xiao Lulang interrupted Feng Lin. Feng Lin was stunned and looked at Xiao Lulang in confusion. To be honest, Xiao Lulang was not a person who would warm up after interacting with someone for a long time. From beginning to end, he emanated an aura that kept strangers away. If not for the fact that he had saved his life back then, Feng Lin would probably think that he was an extremely cold person. However, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that Xiao Lulang had treated that evil woman differently recently. Brother Xiao, you've changed. The four of them understood the seriousness of the matter. Although they did not agree to it explicitly, they all hid it. Gu Jiao told Gu Shaoshan not to come over for the next few days. Although early bacterial leprosy was not as infectious, there was still a certain risk. Gu Jiao did not go up the mountain to pick mushrooms for a while, instead staying at home to take care of the old lady for a few days. It was probably because she had taken good care of her that the old lady completely awoke at noon on the third day. She was no longer in a daze, but mentally she seemed a little off. When Gu Jiao asked her who she was, she widened her eyes at Gu Jiao. When Gu Jiao asked her where she lived, she continued staring at Gu Jiao. Could it be dementia? Do you remember what illness you're suffering from? Gu Jiao continued to ask. The old lady's eyes were still wide open. Gu Jiao had no choice. It seemed that not only did this old lady not remember who she was, but she had also completely forgotten about her illness. Actually, it was good that she had forgotten. Gu Jiao could keep watch on her and not let her go out, but she could not prevent the villagers from coming. If the old lady accidentally let slip about her leprosy, she, Xiao Lulang, Gu Shaoshan, and the other close contacts would be in trouble. As for where to settle her in the future, that was a matter for next time. The most important thing now was to cure her. Nobody must find out that she had leprosy. With this thought in mind, Gu Jiao picked up the medicine jar and went to brew medicine for the old lady. She had to take the medicine from the medicine box, but she also had to take the Chinese medicine as well. Otherwise, she would not be able to keep the medicine box secret. When the old lady saw Gu Jiao holding the medicine jar, she turned her face away in disdain. Gu Jiao vaguely heard a resentful snort. This old lady had quite a temper. The medicine had to be simmered over a fire for an hour. While waiting for the medicine, Gu Jiao took out the medicine box and checked it. She had used a lot of medicine recently and had not had the chance to take stock. She had to check how much medicine she had left, and which of them could not be used casually. However, she was a little dumbfounded after checking. There was a new bottle of anti-inflammatory medicine that she had originally consumed, and an additional tube of antibacterial ointment. There were also a few other items which she could not remember putting in. Gu Jiao looked at the motionless small medicine box, rubbed her chin, and fell into deep thought. At the end of the month, the academy had another exam. Gu Dashun had entered Heaven Grade Class A with the accomplishment of placing second in the admission exam. After that, he lived up to everyone's expectations and performed very well, taking second place again in this exam. Teacher Chen was very happy, but Gu Dashun did not seem very content. Teacher Chen thought that he was blaming himself for not being good enough to get first place, so he patiently assured him, "You and Hanji are both outstanding talents among the new students. Hanji is 2 years older than you and started his studies earlier, so you don't have to worry about your current results." Of course, Gu Dashun was not worried about this. The student named Su Hanji was only a little more outstanding, simply because he had studied a few more years than him, but he felt that he did not have as much potential as he did and was very confident he could readily surpass him. Rather, his ambition did not stop there. He was here to be the dean's personal disciple, and had hoped that the dean would become his teacher. Ever since the last time, he had written many other good articles. Teacher Chen had shown them to the dean, but the dean had never asked to see him again. What's wrong? Is there anything else? Teacher Chen noticed that seemed to be hesitating to say something. Gu Dashun thought for a moment, then mustered his courage and said, "I heard that the dean had set the admission examination questions this time. I wonder if the dean has any plans to take in disciples." There are indeed. After some thought, Mr. Chin came to a realization. Alas, the dean's choice isn't Gu Dashun. Gu Dashun followed Teacher Chen's gaze and saw a trace of pity in his eyes. He felt a chill in his heart. Is it Su Hanji? It's not him. Teacher Chen shook his head. This matter hasn't been completely settled yet, so don't ask for now. Even if you can't be the dean's disciple, the dean will still find time to personally guide outstanding students in the academy. How is that the same? One of them succeeds the dean. Not only will he obtain knowledge, he will also obtain the dean's personal connections. His casual guidance pales in comparison. As a descendant of a poor family, he had always dreamed of soaring into the sky. It would have been one thing if he was not outstanding enough, but he had possessed the qualifications to be chosen by the dean. How could he accept this? Gu Dashun wanted to ask more, but Teacher Chen refused to say anything else. At the impartial hall, the dean looked at Xiao Lulang, who was wearing a cold expression on his face, and said gently, "Have you thought about it?" Xiao Lulang said indifferently, "You'd even want someone who's third from the bottom?" In this exam, Xiao Lulang placed third last. And he did not improve by 1 place, rather, it was because Gu Shaoshun placed dead last. The dean cleared his throat and said, "I won't make things difficult for you. How about this? Go back and think about it for a few days. There's no need to rush to give me an answer. I'll be at the academy before the new year. Come back and give me your answer after you've thought it through." To hear such words from the dean, it could be said that he was being very sincere. Although the Divine Academy was only an academy in a township, the dean was once the head of the 4 greats in the capital. His reputation and talent were unquestionable. If not for unforeseen events in his family, he would not have left the capital to teach in a backwater town like this. He had seen so many students come and go, but Xiao Lulang was the first to really give him an urge to take him in as a personal disciple. Do you want him that much? Aren't you afraid that you won't be able to handle him? After Xiao Lulang left, the old man in cloth garments snorted indifferently from behind a screen. The dean bowed to the screen, then said with a smile, "I'm truly afraid that I won't be able to subdue him." In that case, how about Master take him in as a disciple? It was silent behind the screen. After a while, the old man sighed faintly. Have you forgotten? I've said that I would never take in a disciple again in this life. The young Marquis was deceased, the Imperial College forever closed, and the teacher's heart completely dead. After school, Xiao Lulang and Gu Xiaoshan took second Uncle Luo's ox cart back to the village. When they left town, they found that there were several more checkpoints on the road, all searching for lepers. The two of them became even more vigilant. When Xiao Lulang arrived home, Gu Jiao told him about the old lady's condition. She doesn't remember anything. Xiao Lulang did not think that this was a bad thing, at least not for now. If she doesn't know, she can't let it slip. Is she making a fuss about going out? Xiao Lulang asked. Gu Jiao shook her head. Not at all. I told her that she has tuberculosis and can't go out to get some air, that the red blotches on her face are from the cold. Because tuberculosis is contagious, it's best for her to stay in her room to prevent others from getting sick. From the looks of it, she seems to have taken it to heart and has been quite obedient the entire afternoon. Xiao Lulang went to the house to see the old lady. Her condition had improved greatly, and the damage on her skin had faded a lot. If one did not look carefully, one could hardly see the red blotches on her face. What Gu Jiao did not mention was that after a few more days of treatment, her leprosy would lose its infectiousness. In the blink of an eye, it was the end of the month. It was also the day Feng Lin and Dr. Zhang agreed to treat Xiao Liulang's leg. Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang both woke up early. Xiao Lulang went to the village entrance to get water. Gu Jiao first went to the hut to check the old lady's condition. The red blotches on her face were so faint that they could barely be seen, and the skin damage on the back of her hand had basically disappeared. Although it was still far from a complete cure, she was no longer infectious. Gu Jiao rubbed her chin in satisfaction and turned to the kitchen to brew medicine for her. Seeing the bitter medicine in front of her, the old lady rolled her eyes in disdain. In order to better let her drink the medicine, Gu Jiao asked Xiao Lulang to bring some candied fruits from town. The old lady liked to eat candied fruits, however, if she did not drink the medicine, they would not give her any candied plums. Gu Jiao placed a bowl of medicine and a small plate of candied fruits on the table at the same time. So little? Only 3 of them? The old lady was evidently dissatisfied with the amount of candied fruits. Candied fruits are very expensive. If you don't want them, then it's fine, Gu Jiao said as she reached for the plate of candied fruits. The old lady glared at Gu Jiao resentfully and snatched the candied fruits, cradling them in her arms as she drank the bowl of medicine bitterly. Because Xiao Lulang was going to the medical hall for treatment today, Gu Jiao had to go too, but she could not leave the old lady alone at home. Gu Jiao had considered bringing the old lady along, but there were checkpoints on the roads. If the constables recognized the old lady, all their previous efforts would be in vain. Although she was not sure if the old lady was the leper they were looking for, it was better to be safe than sorry. After some thought, Gu Jiao called Gu Xiaoshan over. Sister, you're finally willing to let me in, Gu Xiaoshan said excitedly. Gu Jiao said, I'm going to town with your brother-in-law today. Stay at home and help me take care of the old lady. Her illness is no longer contagious and I've disinfected the house. Gu Xiaoshan did not understand what disinfecting meant, nor did he ask his sister how she knew that the illness was no longer contagious. He agreed without any hesitation. Okay, sister, don't worry. I'll keep an eye on her. Lunch is in the pot. Just bring her a portion, Gu Jiao continued. Gu Xiaoshan patted his chest and said, Sister, I've got this, don't worry. Thinking of something, Gu Jiao reminded him, if anyone asks, just say that she's your brother-in-law's relative and is here to seek refuge with him. Gu Xiaoshan obediently said, okay. As soon as Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang left, the riffraff under Gu Xiaoshan came knocking. Boss, we've finally found you. I heard that you went to study. Why are you messing around with Dashun? Let's go and find ourselves a scuffle or two. Scram, scram, scram. I've got business to attend to. Gu Xiaoshan chased them away without thinking. Although he felt itchy after holding it in for too long, he had to do what his sister had instructed him to do. When Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang arrived at the Spring Rejuvenation Hall, Feng Lin had already been lingering at the entrance for a long time. He had agreed to meet at Spring Rejuvenation Hall at 9 o'clock. However, he was worried that too many people would look for Dr. Zhang for treatment, so he came at 7. Unexpectedly, after waiting here for more than an hour, there was no sign of a queue. Just as he was wondering, he spotted Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao. His expression went glum in an instant. "Why are you here?" Gu Jiao smiled faintly. "I'm just here to take a look." Feng Lin did not understand. Aren't they saying that this evil woman has someone else she admires? Then why is she pestering Brother Xiao recently? Now she's even following Brother Xiao to his treatment. Brother Xiao's really too much. Why bring this troublesome woman with him for something as important as treating his leg? What if she messed something up? Feng Lin said coldly, "I'm warning you, when we enter the medical hall later, you're not allowed to speak nonsense or touch anything. Don't cause trouble for Brother Xiao, lest you delay his treatment, right?" Gu Jiao replied. She was neither annoyed nor angry. On the other hand, Xiao Lulang frowned and cast a glance at Feng Lin before heading in on his walking stick. Shopkeeper Wang was the one who received them. Shopkeeper Wang had also been waiting for a long time. He welcomed them with a smile, glancing at Gu Jiao surreptitiously. Then he said to Feng Lin, "Young Master Feng, you're here. You must be young Master Feng's friend, young Master Xiao, right?" "I'm Shopkeeper Wang of Spring Rejuvenation Hall." Xiao Lulang nodded mildly. Shopkeeper Wang secretly drew a breath of amazement. This young Master Xiao is so handsome. He might be wearing rags, but he's more refined and noble than any other young master I've seen. And this is... Shopkeeper Wang looked at Gu Jiao as if he did not know her at all. Xiao Lulang paused. "My wife from the Gu family." Gu Jiao, "My wife from the Gu family. That has a nice ring to it." Shopkeeper Wang cupped his hands and smiled. "So it's Madame Xiao. Forgive my poor manners. Gu Jiao, it doesn't sound half as good coming from you. Mr. Wang, is Dr. Zhang really here? Why isn't there a single patient in line here?" Feng Linist. "Sigh, that's because Dr. Zhang's injuries have yet to recover and he can't receive a large number of patients. I didn't release the news, and only informed a handful of patients whose conditions are indeed very anxious. Yours is the only appointment in the morning, the rest are in the afternoon." Shopkeeper Wang had long known that Feng Lin would question him, and already prepared a script in advance. "I see." Feng Lin did not doubt him. Shopkeeper Wang smiled and said, "Young Master Feng, please take a seat in the hall. I'll bring young Master Xiao inside to see Dr. Zhang. Can't I go in too?" Feng Linist. Shopkeeper Wang smiled and said, "I'm afraid that is against our regulations." Feng Lin thought for a moment and nodded. "All right, I'll pass Brother Xiao over to you." Shopkeeper Wang, "Please, you must have Dr. Zhang cure him." Shopkeeper Wang glanced at Gu Jiao from the corner of his eye and smiled. "We'll do our best." After Xiao Lulang and Shopkeeper Wang entered the back room, Gu Jiao stood up. "What are you doing?" Feng Lin asked warily. "Toilet," Gu Jiao said. Feng Lin's face turned red. "Sheesh, go quickly and come back quickly. Don't wander around." Gu Jiao carried her small basket and went to the courtyard in the back. When she walked into the treatment room, Xiao Lulang was already asleep on the rattan chair. Shopkeeper Wang and the branch manager were both there. "Miss Gu." The branch manager cupped his hands in greeting. Gu Jiao's gaze swept across the incense stove on the table and landed on Xiao Liulang's handsome sleeping face. She asked, "Is this incense safe?" The branch manager replied amiably, "It's just a calming incense, made here in our spring rejuvenation hall. It's not harmful to the body. Will Miss Gu be giving him treatment now?" "Yes." Gu Jiao walked over and placed the small basket on the table. It contained her medicine box, but she did not intend to take it out in front of them. The branch manager actually wanted to ask Gu Jiao, "If young Master Xiao is your husband, why won't you tell him directly? Or are they actually not husband and wife?" However, the branch manager was a shrewd businessman. In order to conduct business well, one ought to speak less and listen more. He definitely would not pry into things he had no business knowing. Gu Jiao pulled the screen and checked on Xiao Lulang behind it. At home, Gu Jiao had already observed Xiao Lulang and realized that the problem was mainly with his ankle. After careful inspection, Gu Jiao was certain of her guess. His ankle had been fractured before, but the doctor then did not realize it and thought he only injured his leg. However, even if the doctor did not deliberately mean to treat his ankle, he had his leg put in a splint, so Xiao Lulang did not use his foot much and his ankle healed by itself. However, since the bone fragments inside had not been cleaned up, he would feel piercing pain whenever he walked. He had never shown it, so Gu Jiao speculated that he only had a typical stiff ankle and that it did not hurt. Now that her diagnosis confirmed it, she understood how much restraint he usually showed while enduring it. Truly heart-wrenching. Gu Jiao had done many similar surgeries in her previous life, so it was not difficult for her. The only issue was that the medicine and surgical consumables needed had not appeared in this era yet. However, thinking of what she had discovered a few days ago, Gu Jiao decided to wait a little longer. Besides, now was not the best time for a surgery. He had to recuperate first, so it was better to wait until the academy was closed for the holidays. The branch manager and shopkeeper Wang waited outside the screen the entire time without spying on them. Previously, the branch manager had actually wanted to let the other doctors from Spring Rejuvenation Hall observe Gu Jiao's medical skills, but this was the first time she had come here, so it would seem a little abrupt. Thus, he dropped the idea for the time being. Just now, Gu Jiao had specially pulled the screen when she went in to treat him. That alone clearly meant that Gu Jiao was unwilling to reveal her medical skills. Thinking of this, the branch manager was a little glad that he did not raise that idea just now. However, the branch manager was wrong about one thing. It was not that Gu Jiao was unwilling to reveal her medical skills, but rather that she could not let anyone discover her medicine box. Gu Jiao stayed inside for a long time. The diagnosis lasted 15 minutes, while admiring him took 3 hours. No stripping of clothes was involved. Gu Jiao placed the small medicine box into the basket on her back and walked out with it. The branch manager welcomed her and smiled politely. "Miss Gu, you've been in there for so long. Are young Master Zhao's injuries very complicated?" Gu Jiao said without changing her expression. "It's quite complicated. I'll have to operate on him." It was true that it was complicated, but it was also true that she was admiring his looks. The branch manager was a little startled when he heard that there was going to be surgery. Surgery was a medical skill only used on the battlefield, and people rarely dabbled in it. Firstly, it was very risky, and secondly, it also required the doctor to be very skilled. Even the best doctors from Spring Rejuvenation Hall did not dare to operate on the injured. "Are you sure?" The branch manager seemed doubtful. The last doctor from Spring Rejuvenation Hall who dared to operate on someone was already 50 years old. He was even the descendant of a medical family. "Yes." Gu Jiao nodded. "I'll think about the date first. I'll inform you when it's decided. In addition, there are some things that need to be prepared. The money will be deducted from my consultation fees. Don't worry about it." The branch manager smiled. The Spring Rejuvenation Hall was not a charity. Patients who came here had to spend money, and the better the doctor's medical skills, the higher the consultation fees they could command. "But, can you treat any illness?" the branch manager asked. "That's not the case," Gu Jiao said. "I'll only know after I've seen them. You'd best give me the more difficult cases. Don't waste the number of consultations you have." Now this is confidence. The branch manager did not think that she was boasting shamelessly. In fact, anyone who had witnessed her medical skills had every reason to believe that she could revive the dead. Gu Jiao needed to find some herbs to make medicine for Xiao Lulang and carried the basket to the hall. The branch manager smiled strangely. "Old Wang, say, since her medical skills are so good, do you think she can treat that person in the capital?" "The one from the capital?" Shopkeeper Wang was stunned. It took him a long time to react. "Are you talking about the Duke's son?" The branch manager's eyes lit up. "Yes, him." Shopkeeper Wang hurriedly waved his hand. No. There's no way. He's a noble from the capital. Spring Rejuvenation Hall is nothing to them. There's no way. I think Miss Gu's medical skills are pretty good. Look, we only have one head on our shoulders." Shopkeeper Wang cruelly extinguished the branch manager's idea. It was not that he was unwilling to earn money from the Duke, but the young master's illness was truly difficult to treat. If they messed up his treatment, heads would roll. Speaking of which, that young master was quite pitiful. Back then, when the Duchess gave birth to him, He was less than a month old and was born in a dilapidated temple. She did not bring a midwife with her, so she found one from a nearby village. At this moment, Gu Jiao walked over from the backyard with a small basket on her back. "It took so long for you to go to the latrine?" Feng Lin muttered softly. Xiao Liulong's gaze landed on Gu Jiao. When she approached, he asked her, "Are you feeling unwell? Let the doctor have a look at you." "I'm fine, let's go," Gu Jiao said. She did not look like she was sick. Xiao Lulang went to get the herbs. When he paid the bill, he realized that the medicine for half a month cost less than 1 tael of silver. "Did you make a mistake?" "No, that's the price," the clerk said. "I told you long ago, their business is not good, so they lowered the price," Feng Lin whispered into his ear. "But isn't this too ridiculous?" However, other than this, Xiao Lulang could not think of any other reason. It could not be that some noble was secretly helping him. The group left the spring rejuvenation hall. The branch manager personally sent them to the door. When he brushed past Gu Jiao, the second boss grinned and extended 5 fingers to Gu Jiao. "The medicine's 5 taels of silver. It's on your tab." Gu Jiao gave him a domineering look. "Deduct it from the consultation fee." Speaking of which, the branch manager had not asked her to treat anyone else yet, so she did not know what kind of business he would give her. "Brother Xiao, I'll send you back," Feng Lin said. Xiao Lulang said firmly, "There's no need, second Uncle Luo's ox cart is just over there. Go back to the academy and study, you're having your exam next year." At the mention of this, Feng Lin had a migraine. He was actually not very knowledgeable, and his teacher always remarked that his essays were too rigid and not creative enough. It was fine if he encountered a conservative examiner, but if the examiner followed the newer schools of thought, he would definitely fail. Feng Lin sighed. "All right, I'll go to the academy first. Be careful on the way back." With that, he glared at Gu Jiao again, as if worried that Gu Jiao would cause trouble for Xiao Lulang. However, ever since Xiao Lulang said that she had a name, he had never called her a little evil woman again. After Feng Lin left, Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang did not return to the village immediately. Instead, they went to the stores to buy something. Gu Jiao bought some candied fruits, peanuts, and melon seeds. She realized that the old lady was easy to coax. As long as she was given something to eat, she could stay in the house for an entire day. Xiao Lulang, on the other hand, bought some brown sugar. Last time, he had borrowed brown sugar from Auntie Zhang's family, but he had yet to return it to her. When the two of them carried the items onto the ox cart, second Uncle Luo smiled. "Are you buying New Year's goods?" "It's about time, it's almost the end of the year." The two of them were stunned. They suddenly realized that New Year's was coming. The two of them were not actually muddle-headed, it was just that they did not have the habit of planning for New Year's. The lights of myriad households and the family reunions on New Year's Eve were always the loneliest days for them. In her previous life, Gu Jiao left home at the age of 8 and moved into the organization's research institute. Whenever New Year's Eve rolled around, the organization would collectively take a break, and she would be the only one left in the empty institute. Gu Jiao did not know much about Xiao Liulong's situation. Perhaps he had lively New Year's Eves before, but now it was all gone. She was a lonely soul in a different world, and he was a loner in a foreign land. Second Uncle Luo's words left the two of them momentarily at a loss. However, the two of them did not say anything. They only took the things in their hands and silently boarded the ox cart. The ox cart traveled slowly. When they arrived at the village, the sky was already dark. Second Uncle Luo drove the ox cart back to his house. Gu Jiao threw everything into her small basket and walked towards her house with Xiao Lulang. Halfway through, she saw from afar that something seemed to have happened at the entrance of her house. A throng of people surrounded it, and the crowd was impenetrable. There were faint curses coming from within the crowd. Auntie Zhang, who was at the door and could not leave because she was feeding her 2 grandsons, shouted at the two of them, "Oh my, Sling, why are you only back now? Something happened at your house?" "What happened, Auntie Zhang?" Xiao Lulang asked. "The Gu family went to your house and quarreled with your, great-aunt." "Great-aunt? When did such a person come to their house? Could it be that old lady?" The old lady was suffering from dementia. She would be bullied badly. Gu Jiao turned to Xiao Lulang and said, "I'll go take a look first." Aunt Zhang hurriedly said, Hurry up and go. Your grandmother's not easy to deal with. Gu Jiao had been here for so long, but she had never seen the original owner's grandmother. She only knew that her surname was Wu. When she was young, she was a shrew and got herself married to Old Master Gu. Old Master Gu was a scholar and later became the village's administrator. Reasonably speaking, Madame Wu should restrain herself accordingly, but Madame Wu instead became more and more arrogant. In the village, Madame Wu was known as the foremost person who should not be trifled with. That was why Auntie Zhang was worried that Xiao Liulong's great-aunt would be bullied. When Gu Jiao arrived at her house, she realized that all the women from the Gu family were here. Madame Wu and her two daughters-in-law, Madame Zhou and Madame Lu. Of course, Gu Shaoshun and Gu Ershun were also there. Gu Ershun stood beside her mother, while Gu Shaoshun stood beside the old lady. However, it was different from what Auntie Zhang had described. It seemed to be Madame Wu and the other two who were being scolded until their faces turned beet red. If you have the guts, say what you just said again. Madame Wu placed her hands on her hips and pointed at the old lady. The old lady had someone bring a stool for her. She sat on it boldly, crossing her legs, and grabbed a handful of melon seeds. As she ate, she said casually, "Why do I have to repeat myself? Is your brain not good enough to understand, or are you deaf?" Madame Wu had domineered in the village for so many years, but no one had ever humiliated her like this. It was no wonder that her two daughters-in-law invited her over to join them. With this old woman's abilities, her two daughters-in-law would not be able to withstand it at all. "I don't care. He must give me a tael of silver tonight." Madame Wu could not win the argument and instead started to act shamelessly. The old lady spat a mouthful of melon seed shells on her face. "Did he eat your rice, or drink your porridge? Even prostitutes aren't as shameless than you. Don't mention a tael, he won't be giving you even a copper coin." To actually compare Madame Wu to those shady women from the brothels, Madame Wu was about to blow up in anger. "Madame Wu, you..." The old lady did not give Madame Wu a chance to retort at all. "Also, don't say that it's for my Jiao Jiao's food. How much does she even eat? Yet you're asking for so much?" Jiao Jiao originally wanted to find a husband to marry into the Gu family, but you went and chased them both out. Since you chased them out, they have nothing to do with your Gu family anymore. Madame Wu was so angry that she was trembling. That's just living in separate houses. What did she mean by chasing them away? If word got out, the Gu family's reputation would be ruined. The old lady munched on another melon seed. "Oh, so you admit that you're living separately? Since you're living apart, why do you still ask Lu Lang to give you money? So shameless." Madame Wu's eyes were spinning. Where did this crazy woman come from? I'm so pissed. On the other hand, the villagers were about to die of laughter. Madame Wu had never lost a spat in the village, yet today, she was rebuked and shut down completely. It was the Gu family's fault that they were living separately. However, at that time, the Gu family announced to the public that it was Xiao Liulong's idea. If it was Xiao Lulang who was unwilling to live with the Gu family, the villagers could not say anything. Everyone in the village also knew that Gu Jiao had been eating at the Gu family's house despite that, but they did not expect the Gu family to be receiving money for it. Gu Jiao was only a 14-year-old girl. How much could she eat? However, the Gu family actually asked Xiao Lulang to give them 1 tael a month. Was this not simply extortion? 1 tael of silver was enough for an entire family to eat for 2 months. Madame Zhou and Madame Lu only came to ask for it because they realized that Xiao Lulang had not given it to them this month. Who would have thought that the situation would go out of control? What should we do now? Our mother-in-law doesn't know how to keep her mouth shut, and she's been tricked into saying all sorts of things all this while. If this goes on, our mother-in-law will spill all of the Gu family's secrets. The sisters-in-law exchanged glances and made a decision in their hearts. They could not let them quarrel anymore. They had to quickly pull their mother-in-law back. "Mother, let's not lower ourselves to her level. Let's go back first." Madame Zhou went forward and grabbed Madame Wu's arm. Madame Lu also walked over and grabbed Madame Wu's other arm. "That's right, mother. Let's not argue with this crazy woman." If they had said that at the beginning, the villagers might have believed them. However, after their spat, Madame Wu and her 2 wives had been completely riled up. but the old lady was still calm and composed. If they had to say who was the crazy one, it would be Madame Wu. The villagers' delighted expressions infuriated Madame Wu. Madame Wu rolled up her sleeves and spat, "Old fart. Do you know who I am? I'm the village administrator's wife." Ha! The old lady rolled her eyes. "And I'm the emperor's mother." The people around them all burst out laughing. This old lady was quite the character. She did not hold back at all, and was not afraid that she would be beheaded if word got out. Madame Wu was an unreasonable person, but she had finally met someone who was more than her match. She could not win with her words, so she planned to attack her directly. "I swear I'll chase you out of the village today." Before she could finish her sentence, the old lady splashed a basin of cold water on Madame Wu, causing her to be petrified on the spot. Then, ignoring everything else, the old lady turned around and entered the house. She did not want the stool, nor did she care for Gu Shaoshun. She slammed the door and bolted it shut. She slipped away real quick. Everyone's stomachs hurt from laughing. Just now, this old lady's true abilities had been completely unleashed. They had thought that she would fight Madame Wu to the bitter end, but it turned out that she was not blinded by anger at all. Knowing that she could not defeat Madame Wu and the other two, she first insulted Madame Wu, then took the opportunity to lock Madame Wu and her daughters-in-law outside. When had Madame Wu ever suffered such humiliation? She found a rock on the ground and rushed forward in a rage to smash the door. However, the rock did not reach the door. Instead, a bright sickle flew over with a whoosh, chopping into the door. Madame Wu was shocked, and her hand that was holding the rock instantly froze. If the sickle had been half an inch higher, it would have slashed her hand. Madame Wu was so shocked that she let go. The rock fell to the ground and smashed her foot. "Ah!" Madame Wu screamed. How could a rock for smashing a door be small? Of course she had to specially pick the largest one. Madame Wu was in so much pain that she cried when such a huge rock landed on her foot. The scythe flying over, and Madame Wu dropping the rock on her own foot. This all happened too quickly, and the commotion was simply too much for everyone to take in. It had been a long time since such a huge commotion had happened in the village. Everyone turned around and saw Gu Jiao walking forward calmly. She carried a small basket on her back. Her thin figure looked harmless, but her cold eyes emitted a murderous aura. Everyone involuntarily shrunk their necks and automatically made way for her. Heavens know how she threw that scythe. If it didn't hit the door, wouldn't it be sticking out of someone's head right now? Thinking of this, everyone could not help but feel a chill run down their spines. Madame Lu was the first to react and yelled at her, "Miss Jiao, you came back at the right time. Hurry up and get that crazy woman to open the door. Look at how she hit your grandmother with that stone." Gu Jiao laughed coldly. "Second aunt, aren't you getting old-sighted at such a young age? The person who picked up that stone, and who hit her foot with it, don't you clearly know all that?" When she said this, Madame Lu was dumbfounded. This lass, when she get this good at dissing people? If she had only been muddle-headed when she pulled Gu Dashun and kicked Gu Er Shun, then calling her and Madame Wu blind in public would have been a clear sign of falling out with the Gu family. "You damn brat! How dare you scold your grandmother?" Madame Wu rolled up her sleeves and was about to walk forward when she almost tumbled to the ground in pain. Madame Zhou hurriedly supported her mother-in-law. "Mother, be careful." Madame Wu was in pain and anger. She pointed at Gu Jiao and yelled, "Bloody ingrate! Why didn't I drown you back then?" At this moment, Xiao Lulang came over. Recently, Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao had been seen together with each other frequently, and rumors were spreading in the village that their relationship had gotten better. However, Xiao Lulang had never affirmed their relationship explicitly, so many were still guessing that this was all idiot Gu's wishful thinking. "Lulang, look at what your great-aunt and Gu Jiao have done. Your grandmother's already getting on in years," Madame Zhou chided Xiao Lulang. Unexpectedly, before she could finish, she heard Xiao Lulang say indifferently, "Since she's already old, she shouldn't be out and wandering." Madame Zhou suspected that she had heard wrongly. "Are you okay?" Xiao Lulang walked to Gu Jiao's side and asked. "I'm fine." Gu Jiao shook her head and plucked the sickle off the door. Xiao Lulang said towards the door, "Great, and we're back." The door creaked open. Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao walked in. Everyone looked at each other. Were our eyes playing tricks on us just now? Did Xiao Lulang really talk to Idiot Gu? And he even asked her if she was okay? Did they really get together? Xiao Lulang closed the door after entering the house, but it was not shut tightly, so they could hear his unhurried voice. If you encounter such a thing again in the future, report it to the officials. I'll go to the magistracy personally to submit a report. As soon as he said this, the three women from the Gu family, who had originally planned to rush in, froze in their tracks. Could this sort of thing be reported to the authorities? Xiao Lulang said it so self-righteously. We might actually get reported? Who could have known that that cripple was so cold-hearted? Mother, remember that issue with the third branch? Madame Zhou reminded her softly. There was indeed something fishy back when the family had separated. The third branch's fields and their daughter-in-law's dowry had been confiscated by them. If this matter was really brought to the authorities, they were afraid that they would be found out. Madame Wu gritted her teeth and left with her two daughters-in-law. The people involved had all left, so those who were watching the show also returned home. Gu Erzhun also left, while Gu Shaoshun circled around the village before sneaking into his sister and brother-in-law's house. Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang were sitting on chairs in the central room, while the old lady sat on a stool opposite them. Her legs were crossed, and she was munching on melon seeds, not at all thinking that she should explain herself for the trouble. The villagers thought that Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang were different from what they had imagined, but the two of them felt that they had completely misjudged this old lady. Not knowing how to do anything, not knowing how to answer when asked, while also reacting stiffly, Gu Jiao really thought that she had dementia. Yet, when she fended off Madame Wu just now, she was practically like a master fending off a mewling kitten. These past few days, was that all an act? Gu Jiao asked. The old lady said unhappily, "Is this how you talk to your great-aunt? Did you get addicted to acting?" "No, wait, this didn't seem like an act." Gu Jiao said solemnly to Gu Shaoshun, "Come with me." Gu Jiao closed the door. "Tell me everything that happened today." Gu Shaoshun honestly explained what happened in his caregiving experience. It turned out that the old lady really did not remember anything. When she woke up at Gu Jiao and Xiao Liulong's house, she thought she was part of the household. She grabbed a handful of melon seeds and asked Gu Shaoshun, "Which of those two unfilial kids is my grandchild?" Gu Shaoshun remembered his sister's advice and did not dare tell the old lady that she actually had leprosy. However, he could not actually say that his sister and brother-in-law were her real grandchildren. In a moment of desperation he said, "You're my brother-in-law's great-aunt, and you came all the way to seek refuge with him." Gu Jiao had not expected that the old lady did not actually suffer from dementia, so she did not prepare an excuse for Gu Shaoshun to deal with her. Then she said, "Why does it seem like your sister is the head of this household?" I said, "What's wrong with that? Brother-in-law married into the family." Then she asked again, "If he married into her house, then where's the rest of the family?" So I said that you two have been living separately from the main household. Hearing this, Gu Jiao held her forehead. How was she the head of this family? Both Xiao Lulang and her had always been busy with their own things, and would only occasionally have a meal together. "Shaoshun, you dummy. You've been tricked by the old lady." No wonder the old lady was able to pinpoint the Gu family's sore spots so accurately. She had completely understood their situation after hearing from Gu Shaoshun. Then why did she always ignore me when I asked her questions? It made her think that she was slow to react. Gu Shaoshun said, "She said you're unfilial, and she doesn't want to talk to you." Gu Jiao. All I did was just give her a few candied fruits fewer. Gu Jiao came to the central room. Clearly, Xiao Lulang had already spoken to the old lady. She did not know what Xiao Lulang had said, but the old lady no longer had that high and mighty presence from before, and was a little listless. "I'm so tired from that spat. I'm going to sleep for a bit. Call me when dinner is ready." The old lady snorted and swung her big butt towards them before returning to her room. Gu Jiao looked at Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang paused for a moment and said, "Back then, that barefoot doctor told us that the medicine has to be taken for a year according to the prescription. However, if the infected person recovered quickly, then they will cease to be contagious in a month." He did not forcefully persuade Gu Jiao to keep her, but only told her that she would not be contagious soon, hoping that Gu Jiao would agree to taking her in. Gu Jiao did not know that this little dolt was able to show compassion to strangers. Maybe the old lady reminded him of his elder brother, who passed away early. All right, then great-aunt can stay, Gu Jiao said with a sigh. She did not intend to chase her away in the first place. However, it would be good if she could have him owe her a favor. The two of them temporarily acknowledged her as their great-aunt. This was the safest method now. It turned out that their decision was correct, because that very night, a group of soldiers barged into Clear Spring Village, searching every house for the patient who had escaped from Leper Mountain. The only outsider in the village was the old lady. When they found out that she had arrived in the village only recently, the soldiers rushed into Gu Jiao and Xiao Liulong's house promptly. When they arrived, the old lady had just finished eating and went into the house to warm herself up. Both husband and wife were still eating at the table. Dinner was quite sumptuous: stir-fried cured meat with cabbage, scallion egg pancakes, wild mushroom stew, cold-cut wood ear fungus salad, and spiced peanuts. Of course, no one was drinking. The fragrance of cured meat and scallions assaulted their nostrils, making the soldiers hungry in an instant. "Constables, is anything the matter?" Xiao Lulang asked. The soldiers came back to their senses and said, "I heard that an old lady came to your house." "Where is she?" Xiao Lulang brought her to the old lady's house. "She's my great-aunt. She had just arrived from Su County a few days ago." As he spoke, he went forward and took a plate which the old lady had not hidden in time. "You're secretly eating those candied fruits again. Didn't I tell you that you can't have too much sweet food because of your age?" Caught red-handed, the old lady turned away resentfully. The soldiers did not have an illustration of the leper, but the higher-ups had described her characteristics to them. Her face and the back of her hand were blotched red, while her face was sallow and she was in low spirits. Aside from her age, the old lady in front of them was dissimilar in every other way. Not only did she not have leprosy spots, but her complexion was rosy and she was in unbelievably good spirits. Leprosy could not be cured. While some prescriptions could delay the onset of the disease, it was absolutely impossible for a patient to recover so well in just 10 days. Most of the soldiers' suspicions were dispelled, and seeing that Xiao Lulang did not avoid or despise the old lady at all, they felt that it was even more unlikely. However, the leader did not dare to let his guard down. He returned to the kitchen and pointed at the medicine jar on the stove. "Whose medicine is this?" Xiao Lulang said, "It's mine. I have a leg injury. I went to the medical hall in town to get this medicine. Let me take a look at the medicine," he said. Gu Jiao went to get the medicine packet. That person opened a packet and found some ginseng. This ginseng was very common for improving blood circulation, and martial arts practitioners were not unfamiliar with it. There was also safflower, which was also common for treating injuries. With these two herbs present, he could basically tell that the medicine was not for leprosy. "What's your name?" the man asked. Xiao Lulang said seriously. "If you have any doubts about my identity, you can go to the Divine Academy to find the dean and check my household register." That person knit his brows. "The dean of the Divine Academy? Is his surname Li?" "That's right," Xiao Lulang said. The soldiers exchanged glances and became more polite to Xiao Lulang. Generally speaking, there was no need to go to the dean to check a household's registry. Xiao Lulang had gone out of his way to tell them, to insinuate that he was someone important to Master Li. Although Xiao Lulang was unwilling to be the dean's disciple, it did not stop him from using his authority to intimidate others. When the need arose, there was no need to hesitate. Master Li's name was certainly very useful. After asking as few more routine questions, the soldiers left. However, the soldiers did not go far. Instead, they dispatched someone to discreetly go to Xuaningxiang's house next door. "Is the old lady next door really that person's great-aunt?" "Yes." "When did she get here?" "Just a few days ago," Xuaningxiang said. "But I heard that she came 10 days ago?" The soldier stared into Xuaningxiang's eyes and asked. Xuaningxiang said seriously, "Who told you that? How would I not know when I live next door?" The soldier looked at the infant in Xuaningxiang's arms. A cold glint passed his eyes, but he still left in the end. Xuaningxiang's back was drenched in cold sweat. The old lady had indeed arrived 10 days ago, but for the first few days her mind was unclear, and she didn't even remember her own arrival, so Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang had pushed back the date of her arrival by a few days. This was different from the day the old lady went missing in Qingchuan town. However, what neither Gu Jiao nor Xiao Lulang knew was that when the old lady had collapsed at Gu Jiao's door, Xuaningxiang had heard the commotion. She felt that something was wrong with the old woman. "Ah Xiang." The voice of the mother-in-law came from the neighboring room. Xuaningxiang steadied her mind and walked towards her mother-in-law's room. "Mother, are you awake? I thought I heard someone in the room just now. Did something happen to my younger son?" The old woman was now most worried about the younger son who had gone to be a soldier, after having already lost one of her sons. Xuaningxiang spoke softly, "My brother is fine, but a sick person from Mafeng Mountain has escaped and the officers came to search our place. They have already left. Man or woman? How old?" "They didn't say," said Xuaningxiang. "How could a leper from Mafeng Mountain run to our place?" Cough cough. Xuaningxiang's mother-in-law coughed violently twice, muttered a few words, and then fell fast asleep in a daze. Xuaningxiang closed her eyes. Although she was not a good person, Gu Jiao had saved her life. The search for the leper by the authorities did not cause much disturbance in Qingchuan village and life went on as normal. Gu Jiao occasionally thought that the old lady had a mysterious background because her presence had caused many officers to search, yet did not reveal or provide any information about herself. But upon seeing the old lady, who was holding a jar of sunflower seeds and cracking them like a squirrel, Gu Jiao instantly thought that she was overthinking. With nothing to do, Gu Jiao mended all the clothes of Xiao Lulang at home. She guessed correctly. To mend fabric is as repairing human skin. It was easy. When Xiao Lulang returned home, he found that his tattered clothes had been mended. Without guessing, he knew that it was Gu Jiao who had mended them. Gu Jiao had never mended clothes before, or at least he hadn't seen it since he moved in. Unexpectedly, she mended them well, with fine and neat stitches. The only thing that confused him was why, unlike other people whose stitches are on the inside, she left the thread ends on the outside when mending clothes. The old lady's recovery was much better than Xiao Liulang's elder brother. Xiao Lulang had once asked the doctor how long it would take for his elder brother to no longer be contagious. The doctor said a month. Although the old lady had not taken the medicine for a month, her condition was much better than a month's worth of treatment. She was now able to eat at the same table. What Xiao Lulang didn't expect was that at the first meal they shared, the old lady almost caused him to choke. "I was wondering," the old lady drank a sip of corn and pork bone soup indifferently, "what's going on between you two? I've been here for so long now, but I haven't seen you two share a room." Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao choked at the same time. "My husband is still young," Gu Jiao said calmly. The old lady looked Xiao Lulang up and down, nodding. "That's right, he's too young. We wouldn't want to drain his energy." Xiao Lulang. The villagers began to speculate whether the women of the Wu family would seek an opportunity to regain their lost face after their defeat with the old lady. Surprisingly though, they haven't seen them for several days. It wasn't that they didn't want to go out, but that Master Gu wouldn't let them. The previous incident had made a big noise and subsequently reached the ears of Master Gu. Before his third son's death, Master Gu had promised to take good care of Gu Jiao. Though he did not say it outright, he intended to keep Gu Jiao at his side all her life and eventually arrange for an incoming son-in-law. The reason why he violated his original promise was mainly that he believed Gu Jiao was a curse. Having already taken the lives of his third son and daughter-in-law, he could not let her curse fall on Dashun. However, Master Gu had never allowed the Wu family to demand household expenses from Gu Jiao. The Wu family told Master Gu that it was Xiao Lulang who wanted to show filial respect to Master Gu and also to support Dashuan's studies. Master Gu believed them. Now that he knew the truth, Master Gu felt utterly embarrassed. From now on, Lulang will also study and should not ask him for any more money. The Wu family was furious. Wu's wife said, "What can a cripple do with studying? He's just wasting money. I heard he failed his examinations again this time. It would be better to give the money to Dashun. When Dashun becomes successful in the future, he will definitely return the favor." Her Dashun was going to be a scholar in the future. A mere grain of rice bestowed by a scholar would be enough for that crippled little family to live on. Master Gu still cared about face. His neighbors had constantly stabbed him in the back, and he did not have the nerve to ask his son-in-law for money again. Master Gu warned Wu not to cause trouble by bringing his daughter-in-law to the Gu family again. Those who had a rough couple of days were not only Wu and her daughter-in-law. Das-hun also experienced the first setback in his life. He finally found out who the head of the academy had favored, and it turned out to be Xiao Lulang, someone he would not have suspected in a million years. Xiao Lulang was not only disabled, but his knowledge was also shallow. There was almost nothing good about him other than his face. He didn't understand, how could the academy head have taken a liking to such a bottom ranker? Das-hun began to recall the changes in the academy head's attitude towards him. The head used to praise him more than once and even met him alone. But ever since Xiao Lulang had gone to meet the head, he was completely ignored. He was sure there was nothing about his scholarship that dissatisfied the academy head. Did Xiao Lulang fabricate something in front of the head, making the head think he lacked virtue and felt repulsed by him? It must be so. Otherwise, why would the academy head choose Xiao Lulang, who ranks last every time, over him? Xiao Lulang looked like an honest person, but he was actually very mean behind his back. Thinking about how Xiao Lulang had stolen something that originally belonged to him, Das-hun felt Xiao Lulang was absolutely despicable. Xiao Lulang, you just wait. That night, Gu Jiao had another dream. Unsurprisingly, she dreamed about Xiao Lulang again. Xiao Lulang finished copying the textbook and took it to the bookstore at noon. Unexpectedly, a theft case occurred at the bookstore and suspicion fell on Xiao Lulang. There was actually a witness at the time, Das-hun. Das-hun saw with his own eyes that Xiao Lulang had left before the owner had entered the bookstore, and knew that Xiao Lulang had never entered the owner's room. However, Das-hun refused to disclose the truth, insisting that only Xiao Lulang had gone to the second floor. This didn't directly accuse Xiao Lulang of being a thief, but it did eliminate any suspicions from others. However, Xiao Lulang wasn't easy to fool. He immediately cracked the case based on several footprints in the backyard. At this point, the incident should have ended. Unfortunately, an investigation delayed his return to the village, which resulted in him getting caught in a heavy snowstorm. Halfway, the donkey cart skidded into a ditch and disfigured Xiao Liulang's face in a crash. The gruesome scar stayed with Xiao Lulang for the rest of his life, leaving him with an indelible shadow. The day after, Gu Jiao woke up and sat at the edge of her bed, dazed for quite a time. This time, she was not dazed by her own dream, but by her husband's streak of bad luck. Why is he such an unlucky teenager? Is he really that unfortunate? Moreover, this time it has damaged his beautiful face. This won't work, absolutely not. The whole issue started because of the meddling Gu Das-hun. If it wasn't for his false testimony, Xiao Lulang wouldn't be late returning to the village in his attempt to prove his innocence. As a result, he got caught in the heavy snow, had an accident, and ruined his handsome face. Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang finished their breakfast before dawn, while the old lady was still sound asleep in her room. Gu Jiao gently saw Xiao Lulang off. It's going to snow today. Wear more layers. Gu Jiao handed him a cloak. Xiao Lulang looked at the stars in the night sky, doubting it would snow, but he still accepted the cloak she handed out. Thank you. As usual, Gu Jiao escorted him to the edge of the village. Xiao Lulang got on the ox cart. Gu Jiao stood beside him waiting until a drowsy Gu Shaoshun came carrying his book bag, then she turned around and left. Gu Jiao knew Xiao Lulang would go to the bookstore that afternoon and knew that he would be framed, but she didn't remind him not to go. She remembered the details of how Xiao Lulang solved the case, so she knew to where the thief took the stolen goods. I've left the food in the pot. Eat when you're hungry, and remember to take your medicine. If you skip a dose, I'll know. Gu Jiao told the old woman inside the main hall. Since the old lady wasn't truly senile, there was no need to watch over her. She wasn't contagious anymore, so there's no fear of her hurting anyone, and as for someone hurting her? Unlikely. The old lady snorted dismissively. Gu Jiao left carrying her basket and happened to pass by Gu Yue, who was emptying water outside the Gu's mansion. Good morning, Sister Yue. She greeted. Under the influence of her mother and the second wife, Gu Yue was distant from Gu Jiao. Seeing Gu Jiao taking the initiative to say hello, she didn't respond and lowered her head and went back inside. Who's talking? Zhou family inquired from inside. Jiao. Gu Yue said softly. Zhou family swung open the door. Gu Jiao greeted her as well. Good morning, auntie. Good morning, good morning. Zhou family tried to maintain politeness. She glanced at Gu Jiao carrying the basket and asked with an awkward smile, Jiao, where are you going this early? Gu Jiao smiled. I am going up the mountain to pick some fresh produce and then sell it in the town. Zhou family's eyes flickered. Does it sell well? I heard wild produce is poisonous. I know which ones are not poisonous. My husband taught me. If she said that it was her own knowledge, nobody would believe it. Zhou family saw the things in Gu Jiao's basket a few days ago when she made a big fuss about it: seeds, candy, brown sugar, and peanuts. It must have costed a lot of money. This girl probably made a good amount of silver by selling the produce. Zhou family's eyes flashed. She chuckled. Can you take auntie with you? You can't pick that much by yourself, can't you? Let auntie help you. Sure. Gu Jiao readily agreed down. Zhou family chuckled to herself, thinking what a fool, so easy to fool. Once she recognizes all the produce, then there wouldn't be anything left for Gu Jiao to pick. Zhou family wouldn't invite Liao family to such a good thing, but Liao family heard it herself, came out carrying a basket. I'm also going with you. Good. Gu Jiao smiled. Gu Jiao went to pick mushrooms in the mountains with the two ants. She could indeed easily trick them into picking some fungus and poisonous mushrooms and sell them, but that would end up hurting innocent people, which she wouldn't stoop to. She picked some normal winter mushrooms with them, enough to fill everyone's baskets, before she was satisfied and left. Can this really be sold for money? Zhou family asked dubiously. Just follow me and you will see, they are really good sellers. Gu Jiao said. Zhou family wanted to go by herself, so she could keep whatever she sold without handing it all over to the family. Unfortunately, Liao family had the same idea, so in the end both of them went with Gu Jiao. Miss Gu Jiao, this is not the way to the marketplace. Halfway down the road, a member of the Liao family asked Gu Jiao curiously. Gu Jiao said, the marketplace would be closing by now. Let's go to the market in the east of the town. The prices there are higher. As soon as they heard they could sell for more money, the two stopped questioning. When they passed an alleyway, Gu Jiao suddenly said, I need to use the restroom. Please wait for me. Go, go, said a member of the Zhou family. Liao sneered, muttering, lazy people always need the toilet. Gu Jiao went through the alleyway to the back door of Huichun Hall and went inside. A quarter of an hour later, Gu Jiao came back. What took you so long? Liao complained. Gu Jiao smiled vaguely. I had a bout of diarrhea. Zhou hurriedly said, Okay, Miss Gu Jiao, where's the marketplace? Let's go sell our goods quickly, we wouldn't want them to lose their freshness. Okay. Gu Jiao nodded with a smile. Gu Jiao led the two people on. Suddenly, a figure darted out from an alleyway on the side. Gu Jiao didn't dodge or avoid, and collided head-on with the person. The man was knocked to the ground. Gu Jiao immediately pulled out a sickle and said, How dare you bump into me? The man was stunned, thinking, who exactly bumped into whom? Gu Jiao didn't care. She advanced on the man with her sickle, and they quickly became entwined in a fight. The man's bundle was knocked off and fell to the ground. He could not pick it up in time, as Gu Jiao chased him several hundred meters with her sickle. Zhou and Liao couldn't help but open the bundle that had fallen on the ground, and seeing the silver inside, they were immediately overcome with greed. The silver was not stolen by them, nor was it robbed, they found it on the street. What they found was theirs. Without speaking, they decided to take the silver and leave, not leaving any for Gu Jiao. The two of them hastily started grabbing the silver. They even ended up in a physical fight over who could grab more. Over at the academy, after Xiao Lulang had finished his meal, he took his transcribed books to Yipin Pavilion. There were many bookstores in Qingchuan town, but this one was the largest. So, even at noon, business was still very good. The books written by Xiao Lulang sold the best, so the bookstore staff knew him well. An attendant greeted him politely, the shopkeeper is out. Could you please wait in the accountant's office on the second floor? Just as Xiao Lulang was about to enter, a sales clerk called him from behind. Are you young Master Xiao? Xiao Lulang turned around. Do you remember me, young Master Xiao? The sales clerk asked, smiling. I remember. You're from Huichun Hall. What can I do for you? Xiao asked. The sales clerk awkwardly explained, it's like this. Last time, we mixed up a few of your prescriptions. The shopkeeper asked me to find you. Would you have time to come to Huichun Hall with me to pick up your medicine? And also, for a free checkup? Normally, if a mistake was made preparing a prescription, the correct one would just be delivered, but Huichun Hall was offering a free checkup as an apology. Makes sense. Xiao Lulang left with the Huichun Hall clerk, leaving Gu Dashun, who was hiding behind the bookshelves, watching contemptuously after him. Xiao Lulang fetched his medication at Huichun Hall and got a checkup. The clerk personally escorted him back to the academy, but as soon they got off the carriage, they heard the students of the academy whispering. Have you heard? The bookstore was robbed, and they say the thief is a new student from our first-tier class. A new student from the first tier? What's his name? Gu Dashun. Xiao Lulang was escorted away by an errand boy from Huichun Hall before he had a chance to step foot in the bookstore. He went straight to Huichun Hall to procure medicine, and everyone at the hall could serve as witnesses to his whereabouts, so naturally no one suspected him. Gu Dashun, however, was a different story. Someone had seen him on the second floor, right where the victim's room was located. The victim had happened to be away at that time, and Gu Dashun was the only one on the second floor. Those who have visited the bookstore knew that the second floor, aside from office rooms, contained guest rooms reserved for the elite and were not open to ordinary folks. In theory, a poor scholar like Gu Dashun should not have been on the second floor at all. Gu Dashun cried out in innocence. An old man asked me to fetch some books for him upstairs. He said he wanted to discuss poetry and philosophy with me. As an ambitious scholar, Gu Dashun had long understood that his status as a provincial graduate could bring many opportunities for him in the future. Some people might even seek to befriend him, so he didn't suspect anything at the time. Who is the old man you're talking about? Call him out, said someone in the bookstore. Panicking, Gu Dashun said, he was not there when I went upstairs. Has any of you seen this old man? The speaker in the bookstore asked the crowd. Everyone shook their heads. They had only noticed Gu Dashun because he was wearing a Tianxiang Academy uniform, making him stand out wherever he was. As it happened, Gu Dashun's conversation with the old man had occurred right on his way to the restroom, an unobserved area. Therefore, the crowd only saw Gu Dashun carrying books up to the second floor. They didn't see anyone inviting Gu Dashun up there. Now, this was really getting on his nerves. The victim's boy servant said, I can't believe someone from Tianxiang Academy would do such a rotten thing. Some very valuable items were in my young master's package. If you took the silver ticket, my master won't blame you, but you must return that letter, or we'll report it to the authorities. Wrongly accused, Gu Dashun's only hope was to find that old man. However, it was as if the man had just vanished into thin air. Seizing upon an idea, Gu Dashun argued, if I stole something, where's the stolen goods? It's not like I could have eaten them. The chief constable squinted. Search his house. Gu Dashun did not worry about the search at all. He was innocent and he knew that they would find nothing incriminating, even if they turned his house upside down. However, it turned out to be a slap in his face. When the constables invaded the Gu residence, Zhou and Liao just got home and were in the backyard burying the silver. Quickly, the constables recognized the bag of silver as the one the victim had lost. In Gu Jiao's dream, Xiao Lulang deduced from the footprints in the backyard and on the exterior wall that the culprit had climbed through the window and acted alone, was about 6 feet tall, and had a slightly lame left foot. But it was not a severe impediment, for he could climb 2-story walls. The thief also had some skills. The residue in some footprints at the crime scene was a fine mix of lime and sandalwood, a characteristic of the sandstone road in the casino and was used originally for warding off evil. Therefore, the thief must be either a gambler or a casino frequenter who would eventually bring the stolen silver to the gambling houses near the marketplace. Gu Jiao only needed to stake out the necessary path to the marketplace. Unfortunately, Gu Dashun was not Xiao Lulang. He couldn't solve the case or prove his own innocence and could only watch as he, along with Zhou and Liao, were taken to jail. Oh my! In the account room of Huichun Hall, the second proprietor was sipping tea leisurely, looking rather pleased with himself. Shopkeeper Wang cast him a sidelong glance and said, Are you happy about getting someone into trouble? Indeed, the second proprietor was the mysterious old man who had lured Gu Dashun to the second floor. With a grin, the second proprietor held up 3 fingers, not just one person. 3. Shopkeeper Wang shivered. That girl is ruthless. She schemes against her own family without a second thought. We have to be very careful when dealing with her, right? The second proprietor stared at the bustling street and said, "What do you know? One must not advise others to be kind if they haven't experienced their pain." Shopkeeper Wang didn't understand those words. Although he worked for the second proprietor, he didn't know much about him. He only knew that he was the legitimate son of the Hu family but not exactly favored by the old master. With a soft laugh, the second proprietor took a sip of tea. "I'm liking this girl more and more." As this case had nothing to do with Xiao Lulang, he didn't pay much attention to it. He only knew that Gu Dashun had stolen something, but not what he had stolen or from whom. However, since he had been to the bookstore, the dean still asked him about Gu Dashun's situation at the Zhongjing Hall. "Did you see Gu Dashun when you were at the bookstore?" asked the dean. Xiao Lulang replied, "Yes, but I left for Huichun Hall at the 4th clock of the afternoon, so I have no idea what happened after that." He was telling the truth. The dean paused and then asked, "Did you see Gu Dashun talking to anyone in the backyard?" Xiao Lulang shook his head. "I didn't go to the backyard." The dean massaged his temples in frustration. "All right, I got it. You may return to your classroom." As Xiao Lulang was about to leave the hall, the dean called out to him again. "Do you think Dashun would really steal?" In an indifferent tone, Xiao Lulang replied, "That doesn't seem up to me to determine." Indeed, once the theft was reported, the authorities got involved. Gu Dashun's innocence or guilt depended solely on the evidence. Unfortunately, all the evidence pointed at Gu Dashun. Having left the Zhongjing Hall, Xiao Lulang was questioned by his own teacher as well as the superintendent from his class at the academy. They were all trying to get information about Gu Dashun. By the time he was through with all the questioning, it was getting late. A furious blizzard began to descend. It was really snowing. Xiao Lulang gazed at the snowy sky and began to walk towards the academy gate where he saw a familiar petite figure. In her small apricot-flowered jacket and carrying a tiny back basket, she was kicking pebbles on the ground, looking sweet and docile. A flicker of emotion passed through Xiao Liulang's eyes as he moved towards her, leaning on his walking stick. Seeing him, Gu Jiao smiled softly. "School's over?" "Yes." Recalling something, Gu Jiao said, "I waited for you, but you didn't come out. So, I asked Uncle Luo and Xiao Shun to leave first." "That's fine. I'll hire a carriage," said Xiao Lulang. Gently tugging on his sleeve, Gu Jiao suggested, "The snow has worsened. Riding is not safe. Let's stay at an inn for the night." Xiao Lulang looked at her small pale fingers on his sleeve. Perhaps due to the approaching new year, all the inns were fully occupied. It took them several tries before they finally found an available inn. Xiao Lulang requested, "2 rooms please." The waiter replied, "Sorry sir, we only have 1 room left." Upon hearing that it was the last room available, the 2 of them were taken aback. The waiter looked at them with confusion. "What are you 2 hesitating about?" "I ain't bragging, but with the new year approaching, all the inns are doing quite well. With the unexpected heavy snowfall today, many out-of-town businessmen have been stranded in our town. If you keep being picky, you won't find a place to stay." They'd understood that rooms were scarce all along their journey, but this seemed somewhat inappropriate. A hint of conflict emerged in Xiao Liulang's brows. As for Gu Jiao, she didn't feel conflicted at all. They were a legally married couple, so what's the big deal about sharing a bed? Besides, it was not her who wanted to sleep with him. They were simply out of rooms, right? However, she still played along and showed an equally troubled expression, which made her appear even more agreeable. Most of the time, Xiao Lulang was a man prone to gentleness rather than severity. The way she hung her head, like a harmless little rabbit, subtly exuded a sense of compliance. At this point, insisting on dragging her frail figure through the snowstorm to find another inn seemed too harsh. Xiao Lulang steadied his mind and said, "All right, we'll stay." The waiter led the 2 to a room on the 2nd floor. The room, being the last available for good reason, was small and gloomy. Considering the snowy weather, however, the inn offered them a pot of charcoal for heating free of charge. The room cost 200 won. It normally cost 100 won, but the price had been raised for the New Year period. After placing the charcoal, the waiter left, informing them that they could dine in the grand hall or request for food to be delivered to their room. Oh, they even have room service here. Gu Jiao was pleasantly surprised. However, Gu Jiao didn't dine at the inn. As she perched on the windowsill, she salivated at the sight of an osmanthus cake stall across the alleyway. She realized that she had slightly changed from her past life. For instance, she used to dislike sweet and hot flavors, but now she was drawn to osmanthus cake and pickled vegetables. "Do you want osmanthus cake?" Xiao Lulang, who was beside her, noticed her drooling. Gu Jiao nodded. Truth be told, Gu Jiao wasn't that greedy, or at least not as greedy as Xiao Lulang saw her. But after spending this time together, Gu Jiao had discovered a fact. He seemed to find it hard to resist when she acted obediently. Xiao Lulang took Gu Jiao out of the inn. The snowfall outside had intensified, but the wind had died down, creating a serene beauty as the snowflakes gently fell to the ground. Amidst the snowy scenery, Xiao Lulang appeared even more handsome, attracting unblinking gazes from passers-by. In the morning, Gu Jiao had reminded Xiao Lulang to wear an extra overcoat. Unfortunately, she had forgotten her own advice when they went out. Furthermore, her petite form was indeed more susceptible to the cold compared to her past life. As such, her shivering was entirely genuine. Xiao Lulang, walking in front, turned around and glanced at her, then took off his overcoat and handed it to her. Her eyes widened as she looked at him innocently, seemingly not comprehending his intentions. "Huh?" Xiao Lulang opened his mouth, his brow furrowing. Exuding a touch of helplessness, he reluctantly draped the overcoat over her. The overcoat retained his warmth and emitted a faint, pleasing fragrance. Gu Jiao blinked her watery eyes. "Thank you." Her voice was soft and sweet. It even caught her off guard. Xiao Lulang didn't respond, but Gu Jiao noticed that he had slowed his pace. Oh, he's actually waiting for her now? When they reached the stall, they discovered that, apart from osmanthus cake, it also sold steaming hot tangyuan, sweet rice dumplings. Gu Jiao's eyes gave away her excitement. They were almost glowing. Xiao Lulang ordered 2 bowls of rice wine tangyuan and sat down with Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao requested for an additional poached egg. The stall owner assumed it was for her and poured it into her bowl. However, when the tangyuan was served, Gu Jiao scooped up the poached egg with a spoon and transferred it into Xiao Liulang's bowl. Coming from a poor background, they rarely ate out. Seeing Gu Jiao hand over her only poached egg to him, Xiao Liulang's eyes revealed a hint of complexity. "Sir, another poached egg, please." His voice was low and moist, evoking a chillier sense amid the snowfall. The vendor had been touched by the young couple's affections and deliberately cooked a larger and prettier poached egg. Gu Jiao quietly poked the bright yellow poached egg with her spoon. It's just that she really doesn't like poached eggs. After finishing the tangyuan and poached egg, they returned to the inn, Gu Jiao carrying a box of osmanthus cake. The initial plan was to buy the osmanthus cake, but after consuming a bowl of tangyuan and a poached egg, she was completely stuffed. The room wasn't particularly cold with the charcoal heating. After removing the overcoat, Gu Jiao called the waiter for some hot tea. The waiter asked if they needed hot water. Gu Jiao requested for some. After washing up, the 2 of them prepared to rest. As there was only one bed and due to the freezing temperature, sleeping on the floor was not an option. Therefore, they each took a quilt. In this freezing weather, 1 quilt would not suffice. They needed 2. Gu Jiao couldn't sleep due to the cold. Her hands and feet were icy. Listening to Xiao Liulang's breathing, she knew he wasn't asleep either. Gu Jiao wanted to call him, but it dawned on her that she hadn't formally addressed him, nor had he addressed her up until now. Just as if they were uncertain about the true nature of their relationship. Married? Friends? No, neither. Lovers? No, definitely not. In the end, Gu Jiao still decided to reluctantly call him her husband. Husband? It was the first time she had addressed him this way and her voice slightly faltered. Xiao Lulang didn't respond for a while, probably stunned by this sudden form of address. After a long pause, he finally asked in a low voice, "What's the matter? Are you cold?" Gu Jiao asked, "Are you very cold?" Xiao Lulang counter-asked, "Yes." Gu Jiao's thin voice echoed in the night, laced with a slight nasal sound due to the cold. Xiao Lulang hesitated for a while before finally sharing half of his quilt with her. In the spirit of sharing, Gu Jiao covered him with half of her quilt, resulting in a complete sharing of their quilts. The young man's body was like a furnace, radiating warmth. Gu Jiao immediately felt a lot warmer. Xiao Lulang froze, deliberating whether to kick this uninvited guest out of his quilt. "Husband, I'm not cold anymore." The young girl's voice was soft, tinged with a trace of cute satisfaction. Xiao Lulang couldn't bring himself to kick her out anymore. In her previous life, Gu Jiao had never shared a bed with anyone, not even a female roommate. She thought she would have trouble sleeping, but within a short time, she fell asleep in the comforting aura. While she journeyed into dreamland, Xiao Lulang did not fall asleep as quickly. He looked at Gu Jiao lying beside him, the soft glow from the snow outside shining on her face through the paper window. She was lying on her side, the half of her face marked with the birthmark was pressed beneath her. She was probably cold, her small face was glowing red. Her eyelashes were long and her features were delicate. If not for the birthmark, she would be a beautiful and enchanting young lady. For some inexplicable reason, a sense of regret flashed in Xiao Liulang's heart. But quickly he furrowed his brows, trying to discard this interloping emotion. Xiao Lulang was a poised sleeper, hardly moving an inch the entire night. Gu Jiao was well behaved too, aside from moving closer and closer to Xiao Lulang, wrapping her arms and legs around him, and placing her small head on his shoulder, she did nothing else. Gu Jiao slept until dawn. When she woke up, Xiao Lulang was already up, sitting by the window reading a book. The daylight seeped through the paper window, illuminating his handsome face like jade. Gu Jiao wasn't sure if she was mistaken, but it seemed like he was blushing slightly. "You're awake." Xiao Lulang greeted Gu Jiao formally but without glancing at her on the bed. I'm up." "Good morning." Gu Jiao rubbed her eyes and yawned softly, being freshly awake. She was slightly dazed and her voice carried a hint of laziness. What normal man could resist this early in the morning? Xiao Lulang felt a rise in his chest and quickly stood up. "I'll go get breakfast." As he spoke, he left, leaving a perplexed Gu Jiao scratching her head. The snow had stopped overnight, and the sun now shone brightly. As the academy was closed today, after breakfast, the two hired a carriage and headed back to the village. Passing the village entrance, they overheard the villagers gossiping around the well. Some people returning to the village at night had slipped and fallen in the sudden snowfall, and in a neighboring village, someone even capsized his carriage into a ditch, almost losing his life in the process. Xiao Lulang thought about their decision to hire a carriage back to the village last night. If not for her suggestion to spend the night at an inn, they might have been victims of an accident, too. At this point, Xiao Lulang was at a loss for words. After all, this was the third time he managed to avoid calamity thanks to her. They got home. The old lady in the house had already risen and was sulking in the main room. Gu Jiao had thought they would be done with their business early yesterday and that they would be able to get back before the snowfall. Therefore, she left only one meal in the pot. Little did she expect that the scholars at the academy would occupy Xiao Lulang until the snow started falling heavily. Evading from the fate despite her dreams, she could only persuade Xiao Lulang to stay overnight in the town. The old lady couldn't kindle a fire. She had eaten cold steamed buns last night, and again this morning, almost breaking her teeth. Gu Jiao was puzzled and wondered, as an old impoverished lady, how could she not know how to make a fire? Is she an old mistress from a wealthy family, or is she the Empress Dowager? Silently, Gu Jiao took out a pack of candied fruit and a box of osmanthus cake. "You're allowed to have 2 pieces today?" The old lady, "No." 5 pieces. Gu Jiao, 3 pieces? The old lady, "Deal?" The old lady, holding her candied fruit and osmanthus cake, turned her back and began munching eagerly. The word about Gu Dashun and the Liao and Zhou families being arrested had quickly spread through the village, and even some from the neighboring village came to witness the excitement. They weren't aware yet of the connection between this incident and Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao, so they ran to the old Gu family mansion for information. Noon arrived and 2 warrant officers came to visit, looking for Gu Jiao. As it turned out, once the Liao and Zhou families were taken to the yamen, under strict interrogation, they truthfully confessed the origin of the silver. It fell from the person who had a fight with the little fool, and they were overcome by greed, so they pocketed the silver and returned to the village before the little fool came back. Ah, so that's what happened. I was wondering why I didn't see both of you when I went back, Gu Jiao said with an unwittingly enlightened expression. The officer looked at her and asked, "Why did you start to fight?" Gu Jiao spoke coldly. "He bumped into me, bullied me, and insulted me." Being bumped and insulted, she grabbed a sickle and chased after him, slashing for several streets. "Girl, you're a hero." If anyone else had acted as such, the officers might have suspected something, but they had already heard from Liao and Zhou families that Gu Jiao was a simpleton. The actions of a simpleton can't be judged by common sense. Therefore, even at this stage, no one suspected that Gu Jiao was purposely waiting there to catch a thief, intentionally letting the thief escape, and leaving the silver behind for the Liao and Zhou families to covet. Even Liao and Zhou families thought that everything was an accident. Only Xiao Lulang had a vague feeling that everything was too coincidental. That person might have been a thief. "What happened to him in the end?" the officer asked. "He ran away." Gu Jiao shrugged. "Do you remember what he looked like?" the officer went on to ask. "He looks, Gu Jiao recalled and gestured, while the other officer, an artistic officer from the Yamen, sketched the appearance of the thief, like this. "Well," Gu Jiao frowned. At that moment, Xiao Lulang came out with a sketch. Gu Jiao's eyes brightened. "Yes. It's this man." The officer and the artist shared an awkward glance. The illustrious Yamen artist was unexpectedly surpassed by his student. Wasn't it like having one's rice bowl smashed? Once they had the sketch, the Yamen solved the case fairly quickly. However, the Liao and Zhou families weren't released immediately because when the Yamen officers initially questioned them about the silver, they confidently claimed it was earned from selling mountain goods. This was a significant amount, coupled with their lies and refusal to hand over the silver. They were found guilty of embezzlement and each fined 20 taels of silver and given 30 lashes. As for Gu Dashun, the shameful actions of his mother and his second aunt reflected poorly on his family's integrity, and he too was nailed to the pillar of shame. The Gu family really took a hit this time. Losing their entire capital, 40 taels of silver, and the reputation that Gu Dashun had painstakingly built was also demolished. For a long stretch of time afterwards, the Gu family probably wouldn't have the strength to stir up any more trouble. Gu Jiao was delighted and ate half a bowl more for dinner. It snowed a bit in the afternoon that day, but it wasn't heavy and it stopped after a while. It didn't affect anyone's ability to get around, but it was a bit cold. When Xiao Lulang got home, his hands were frozen stiff. Gu Jiao hurriedly handed him the ginger soup she'd prepared. Even with frozen hands, he drank the soup in a calm and unhurried manner, exuding a natural elegance and nobility. Gu Jiao watched him intently. "What's up?" he turned to ask. Caught staring, Gu Jiao wasn't at all embarrassed. She smiled. "Nothing. Carry on drinking your soup. I'll go serve dinner." Gu Jiao dished out the hot food from the pot and invited the old lady to join them for dinner. They were halfway through their meal when an uninvited guest arrived. "I'll get the door." Gu Jiao put down her chopsticks. "I'll get it." Xiao Lulang got up with his crutch before her. The old lady said to Gu Jiao. Although in the old lady's mind, Xiao Lulang was her grandnephew and Gu Jiao was merely her granddaughter-in-law, she never showed favoritism to Xiao Lulang. While Gu Jiao continued her meal, Xiao Lulang opened the door, finding not a villager, but a young master and his servant standing there. The young master was dressed grandly and exuded an air of nobility. It was clear he was from a well-to-do household. Xiao Lulang was a bit surprised. Of course, they were also surprised as they were looking for Gu Jiao and they had never expected that a young man would be the one to open the door. The young man was dressed in the white uniform of the Tianxiang Academy, his demeanor pure and refined, his features exquisite and elegant. Both the master and servant were taken aback to find such a delicate-looking young man in such a remote countryside. The young master spoke. "May I ask, is this Miss Gu's home? Who are you? Why are you looking for my wife?" Xiao Lulang asked coldly. "His wife?" The young master was taken aback. "My family name is Qin." Young Master Xiaoqin? Gu Jiao had somehow wandered over. She looked curiously at the young master standing outside her door. "What are you doing here?" Young Master Xiaoqi nearly turned and ran when he saw her. I was about to ask you the same thing. What are you doing here? This is my home. Where else should I be? Gu Jiao retorted. How did you come to be in Gu? Speaking midway, young Master Xiaoqin suddenly understood and stammered. Miss Gu? Gu Jiao raised an eyebrow and lightly touched her chin. So you didn't know who I was after all? She had chased after him for so long and he hadn't even bothered to figure out her identity. Xiao Liulong's face froze over. He gave young Master Xiaoqin a cold look and then turned to go back inside without a backward glance. Gu Jiao, hey. She had the feeling that Xiao Lulang was upset. It was only now that young Master Xiaoqin realized Xiao Lulang had a limp. So that was why a handsome young man like him would marry a girl who didn't act properly. He was disabled after all. What are you doing at my house? Gu Jiao asked coldly. Young Master Xiaoqin then noticed something else. The young girl's eyes no longer held the former fanaticism toward him. She didn't appear to be the slow-witted girl anymore. If you have things to say, just say it. If you have nothing to say, please leave. I won't see you off. Gu Jiao was about to close the door as she spoke. Young Master Xiaoqin came to his senses, reached to hold the door. I came to ask if you have picked up a letter? The silver in his package was taken by someone from the Zhou and the Liao families, but not the letter. It was casually dropped onto the avenue. Since the constables couldn't find it, they thought of Gu Jiao who had been at the scene and could have picked it up. They didn't tell young Master Xiaoqin that Miss Gu was the village fool from Qingchuan village, or else young Master Xiaoqin would never have gone to ask for it himself. Upon hearing young Master Xiaoqin's words, Gu Jiao was surprised. Honestly, she didn't expect the letter's owner to be him. In her dreams, she had only been focused on looking for Xiao Ling. How could she remember what the owner of the letter looked like? But she did indeed pick up that letter. Gu Jiao went back into the house, found the letter and then went back outside to ask him, You mean this? Young Master Xiaoqin's eyes brightened. So you really did pick it up. But why didn't you tell the constables? Gu Jiao shrugged. They didn't ask. That was true. The constables simply forgot. Here you go. Gu Jiao handed the letter to him without any hesitation. Young Master Xiaoqin immediately took the letter from her. The envelope was still sealed, showing no signs of being opened. The joy of retrieving what he'd lost caused young Master Xiaoqin's opinion of her to improve instantly. Perhaps, the nonsensical things she did in the past were simply due to being slow-witted, but essentially she was a good girl who wouldn't keep things she found. Oh, thank you so much. Young Master Xiaoqin sincerely expressed his gratitude. Gu Jiao cut her eyes at him and casually asked, Just a verbal thanks? Young Master Xiaoqin was startled. Gu Jiao smiled lightly. Aren't you planning on providing any substantial rewards like silver? Young Master Xiaoqin was stumped. Where was the girl who picked up lost things and didn't keep them? A quarter of an hour later, Gu Jiao returned to the house holding 100 taels of silver. This sum of money was 3 times the amount that the Zhou and Liao families had seized. Moreover, it was willingly given by young Master Xiaoqin. It was both fair and legal. Where's Xiao Lulang? Gu Jiao asked the old lady. The old lady gestured towards Xiao Liulong's room with her chin. Gu Jiao proceeded to Xiao Liulong's room. Xiao Lulang was currently copying books, a cold expression on his face. Gu Jiao carried the the newly acquired silver over, gently placing it on Xiao Liulong's table. Xiao Lulang paid no attention to it. Are you mad? Gu Jiao asked quietly. Xiao Lulang simply turned his back to Gu Jiao, ignoring her. That sulky attitude of his had made Gu Jiao's heart melt. Gu Jiao leaned down to whisper in his ear, Why am I so blind at such a young age? He's obviously so ugly. Xiao Liulong's eyelashes slightly quivered. She was so close that her breath tickled his earlobe. Gu Jiao spoke softly, I didn't know it was his letter. I simply picked it up and then forgot about it. When he came to ask for it just now, I swindled him out of 100 taels. All the dissatisfaction in Xiao Liulong's heart evaporated with her last sentence. That she had swindled young Master Xiaoqin meant that she must have truly given up on him after all. In fact, he shouldn't have been upset. After all, they were not really husband and wife. One day, he would leave her and this place. He didn't care about her and young Master Xiaoqin's relationship before, and he shouldn't care now. He couldn't explain why he got so angry earlier. Gu Jiao gently soothed him. Are you still angry? I won't look at him anymore. You can look at whoever you like. Xiao Liulong's voice was frosty. Gu Jiao grinned and whispered into Xiao Liulong's ear. He's nowhere near as good-looking as you. Xiao Lulang. With money in hand, Gu Jiao was contemplating what to do next. The next day, when Xiao Lulang returned home from school, the family of three sat down for their meal in the hall. They were considered a family of three, despite lacking familial ties. The trio shared an oddly harmonious rapport. As the old lady gnawed on a large chicken leg, she glanced at Gu Jiao and said, "Speak up." Gu Jiao wondered, how did the old lady know she had something to say? "I want to buy a mountain," Gu Jiao pronounced. "A winter coat or an autumn coat?" The old lady shot Gu Jiao a speechless look. She criticized Gu Jiao for dawdling over such a small matter. "I'm not talking about clothes, but a real mountain, the one behind our village," said Gu Jiao. She often picked fungus and mushrooms on that mountain and noticed its abundance of good stuff. If she could buy it, she could gather mountain products, herb picking, logging, and hunting. In short, the whole mountainside was a valuable asset. It would definitely be a profitable venture. Go buy it. To their surprise, the old lady didn't hesitate at all. When it came to spending money, the old lady was undeniably generous. If it were the original owner's biological mother, Mrs. Wu, she would probably jump up and scold Gu Jiao. "You disaster star, the spendthrift. Even a mountain you want to buy, do you think money is blown by the wind?" In the eyes of most villagers, the mountain was worthless. At most, they could chop some firewood or pick some wild vegetables. Although there were mountainous fruits and game, nobody would buy the entire hill for these reasons. Gu Jiao, with impressive knowledge of mountain goods and the ability to handle any danger deep in the mountains, saw the mountain as a treasure trove. In the past, she would make the decisions. Xiao Lulang would never interfere with her decisions, but ever since the old lady came, there seemed to be a subtle shift in their interactions. "You're talking about the mountain behind Uncle Luo's house, right?" Xiao Lulang asked. Gu Jiao nodded. Qingchuan village was surrounded by mountains on three sides. The mountain that Gu Jiao had her eye on was situated in the middle. It was a mountain that villagers frequently visited, with Uncle Luo's house located at its foot. "All right, I'll go ask Li Jing later," said Xiao Lulang without any hesitation. Scratching her head, Gu Jiao wondered why Xiao Lulang needed to ask Li Jing, her grandfather. She could have asked him herself. She had not shared her intentions only to have him running around for her. After dinner, Xiao Lulang headed to the Gu family's old mansion. Zhou and Liao families had been flogged 30 times each by the yamen and had been staying obediently at home to recover. Hence, the mansion was relatively peaceful. "Brother-in-law, why are you here?" The door was opened by Gu Shaoshan. "I came to find Li Jing," Xiao Lulang replied. Despite being married with Gu Jiao, he always addressed Li Jing by his title. Oh, Gu Shaoshan was merely surprised that his brother-in-law had come to visit but not about his address for the old man. After all, the Gu family had compelled his sister to marry and subsequently exploited money from Xiao Lulang. Each incident was a debt in itself. "Grandpa, my brother-in-law is here." Gu Shaoshan led Xiao Lulang to the old man's room. The old man was slightly taken aback to see Xiao Lulang. If he remembered correctly, this was the first time Xiao Lulang had visited the old Gu mansion since marrying Gu Jiao. "What brings you here so late?" the old man asked. Xiao Lulang casually replied, "I came to ask Li Jing how to buy the mountain behind Uncle Luo's house." "Why are you asking about this? Is someone from the academy looking to buy a mountain?" No matter how imaginative the old man could be, he would never expect his own granddaughter to be interested in buying a mountain. Buying that mountain would require a significant sum of money. Plus, it's not up for sale to just anyone. That mountain isn't managed by the village or the county yamen. It's the temple's property. "A temple?" Xiao Lulang frowned in surprise as he had no idea there was a temple around. The old man confirmed, "Indeed, a temple. You probably haven't been there since you arrived not long ago. It's on the other side of the mountain. Walk around the foot of the mountain, and you'll reach it in about 2 hours. If someone from your academy wants to buy the mountain, you'll have to negotiate with the temple's abbot." As if a memory had sprung to his mind, the old man added, "Actually, Jiao was born in that temple." When Xiao Lulang returned home, Gu Jiao met him promptly and asked, "How did it go? What did the Gu family say?" Xiao Lulang relayed precisely what the old man had said. "So, the mountain belongs to the temple. Gu Jiao hadn't gone to that temple before. Wait, according to what her grandfather said, she was born in that temple, so technically, she had been there before. Did they mention approximately how much the mountain would cost?" "Not specifically, but smooth negotiations may not be possible with only 100 taels," said Xiao Lulang. "Oh, I can handle that." As Gu Jiao spoke, she pulled out a handful of silver coins from her pocket and placed them on the table. The old lady paused her melon seed munching. But Gu Jiao was not finished. She pulled out another handful and yet one more handful from her pocket. The old lady and Xiao Lulang were both stunned. These silver coins, when added up, must be worth 2 to 3 dozen taels. Where did she get them all from? Xiao Lulang collected his thoughts and asked, "Are all these earned by selling mountainous products?" Gu Jiao widened her eyes, looking utterly sincere. "I didn't earn them through fighting, I promise." Xiao Lulang. Even in ancient times, students didn't get many holidays. Apart from a 10-day holiday every month, there was the agriculture break during farming seasons, clothing handover break in September, and the biggest break was the New Year's holiday from December to January. The New Year's holiday usually began in early December, but this year it was postponed to late December. Because the holiday was about to begin, there would be no monthly breaks for the next half-month. Gu Jiao didn't want Xiao Lulang to take leave from the academy for this matter, so she decided to visit the temple herself. Learning from her past mistakes, Gu Jiao didn't just leave food in the pot for the old lady this time, but asked Xuaningxiang to take care of her. "Your aunt-in-law? Her disease is under control now. It's not contagious?" "Ah, that's not what I meant." How could Gu Jiao not know about Xuaningxiang helping her cover up? She guessed that Xuaningxiang had figured it out. But Xuaningxiang had neither accused her nor distanced herself from her. Xuaningxiang never asked how Gu Jiao cured leprosy, she just believed Gu Jiao was right. "Don't worry, I will take good care of your aunt-in-law." Gu Jiao went to the other side of the mountain with a basket on her back. The temple was halfway up the mountain, and the path was extremely difficult. There was a section without steps and entirely covered in accumulated snow. Luckily, Gu Jiao, who had been diligent in climbing and exercising since she arrived here, was not deterred by this hazardous mountain road. Her pace was faster than average, but it still took her about 2 hours to reach the temple, almost at noon. The temple was not large, and the ancient and weather-beaten plaque read Ningen Temple in large characters. Perhaps it was because there were fewer people due to the snow, but Gu Jiao did not encounter a single worshipper along the way. There weren't many monks in the temple either. Gu Jiao hadn't seen a single one since she entered. Could it be that this temple is deserted? But the ground was clean and tidy, as if it was taken care of every day. As she was wondering this, Gu Jiao arrived at the Guanyin Hall. She stood behind a pillar and absent-mindedly glanced at the hall. Finally, she saw the first living person of the day. It was a woman dressed in silk. Although exquisitely dressed, she wasn't ostentatious. A white cloak draped over her body, reflecting the light of the snow on the ground. From Gu Jiao's angle, she could only see the woman's back, but she could feel a gentle and graceful aura emitting from her. The woman devoutly performed several prostrations and put her hands together. "I pray to the Bodhisattva to bless my child to be safe and smooth." Her voice was even soft and pleasant to the ear. Gu Jiao rarely took an interest in strangers, especially women. She didn't like women, did she? But just as she was engrossed in watching, there suddenly came a sharp rebuke from the side. "Who brought this rascal who dares to peep at my mistress?" Gu Jiao snapped back to reality and looked in the direction of the rebuke to see a maid in light green armor walking from the opposite corridor. The maid was scolding not her, but several little monks hiding behind another pillar. The little monks who were caught peeping at the beauty yelled in a panic and ran away in all directions. "So, there are monks, but these are such little monks." One of the chubby little monks ran in the wrong direction, coming towards Gu Jiao, and with a smack hit Gu Jiao's leg and fell on his butt. Gu Jiao was charmed by this puzzled little chubby monk and wanted to touch him. But before she could extend her hand, the little boy scrambled up and ran away, chirping with alarm. The woman inside the hall finished her prayers and walked out, saying to the green-armored maid, "Lulu, don't be rude." "Mistress," grumbled Lulu, coming forward, "if we don't teach these little pests a lesson now, they will have no respect later and will run into your meditation room without a second thought." "They're just children," the mistress said. Maid Lulu pouted, clearly not agreeing, but didn't continue to argue with the mistress. Just when Gu Jiao thought they were going to leave, the woman inside the hall looked in her direction. Gu Jiao's figure was completely hidden by the pillar. Even the maid coming straight towards her didn't notice her. Gu Jiao wondered how this woman had sensed her presence. "Who is there?" The maid was immediately alert. Gu Jiao had to step out. She was wearing a poor pale purple flower short jacket, brown cotton pants, black cloth shoes on her feet that were already soaked by snow, and a worn-out small basket on her back. But she wasn't skilled in arranging a woman's hairstyle, so she had made a small bun on top of her head. She indeed had the appearance of a rural poor girl, especially considering the conspicuous red birthmark on her face. The maid's face immediately showed a trace of contempt. However, the woman showed no signs of disgust in her eyes. The snow stopped, and the roof of the temple was covered with auspicious snow. The green and elegant mountain was wrapped in silver, and between heaven and earth was a vast expanse of pure white, but none of these compared to her beauty. This was the first time Gu Jiao had seen such a beautiful woman. The most beautiful was her temperament, gentle, graceful, serene, and dignified. "Did you also come to pay your respects to the Bodhisattva Guanyin?" the woman asked Gu Jiao with a smile. Such a gentle voice, such a gentle smile. Gu Jiao was taken aback before saying, "No, I came to see the abbot." With a gentle laugh, the woman said, "The abbot has gone down the mountain." Before she could finish her sentence, another maid hurried over with a food box in her hand. There was unthawed ice on the road, her foot slipped, and she fell forward with a cry. Not only did she fall, but the food box in her hand also flew out, about to hit the woman. Gu Jiao took a step forward and blocked the food box with her arm. The food box broke open in midair, the soup and vegetables spilled out, drenching Gu Jiao. "Mistress, are you all right?" Lulu anxiously looked at her mistress. The woman shook her head, "I'm fine." Having said that, she turned to look at Gu Jiao, concern in her eyes. "But what about you?" She was standing in front of her, and the food box was originally going to hit her. If the young girl hadn't blocked it for her, her face might have been hit. "I'm fine," Gu Jiao said. The weather was too cold, the food had already cooled down, but the soup sticking to her was uncomfortable. Seeing Gu Jiao's predicament, the woman felt guilty. She looked at the maid who had fallen on the ground and sighed, "Can't you walk properly?" The maid also had a hard fall, her knee was swollen. Bearing the pain, she got up and complained, the road was too slippery. The woman knew it wasn't intentional, but a girl had been hurt. She felt guilty and said to Gu Jiao, "I'm sorry for my lack of discipline, and for dirtying your clothes. Please come with me to the meditation room to change into a clean outfit." Gu Jiao thought for a moment, and did not refuse. This woman seemed to be a regular visitor to the temple, having a separate meditation room in the temple. It was located at the end of the corridor and looked no different from the other meditation rooms, but the interior was elegantly and quietly furnished, matching her temperament perfectly. The two maids also entered the room. The woman asked the maid in green armor named Lulu to open a crate. Lu immediately wasn't happy. "Mistress, these are all young mistress's clothes." A country girl like this wasn't worthy of their young mistress's clothes, was she? The woman's gentleness receded slightly. "You go back and get another serving of vegetarian food, and be sure to bring some for this young lady too." Feeling the pressure from her mistress, the maid lowered her head and obeyed, "Yes." The woman personally chose a suit of clothes for Gu Jiao from the box. "These are my daughter's clothes. I don't know if they will fit you, but they must be better than wet clothes. Please change into them quickly, young lady." Gu Jiao went behind a screen to change and then came out. She had thought the clothes would be a bit large, but surprisingly they fit her well. "They're really suitable for you." The woman smiled and said. They were her daughter's clothes, but the girl wore them with even more flair. "How old are you?" Gu Jiao answered, 14. The woman's eyes lit up, "Same as my daughter. My daughter was born in this temple." "Gu Jiao, how coincidental. So was I. The lady pointed to the heated brick bed next to her and smiled gently, saying, "Sit down and talk." Gu Jiao sat down on the bed, with a small table between them. Several exquisite pastries were set on the table. The lady pushed the pastries towards her. "Are you hungry? Have something to eat first. The vegetarian meal will be served soon." Yes. Having climbed up the mountain for so long, Gu Jiao was indeed hungry and picked out a piece of yellow flower-shaped pastry. Gu Jiao was very quiet. "Is it tasty?" the lady asked her. "Yes." Gu Jiao nodded. Seeing the lady looking at her with suspicion, she paused and said, "It tastes better than the pastries from Liji." "What's Liji?" the lady asked her. "The best pastry shop in the town," Gu Jiao replied. The lady finally felt relieved. Actually, she had made these pastries herself. When she was bored in the residence, she would make pastries to kill time. Unfortunately, among her two children, her son was weak and often sick and couldn't eat, while her daughter was in great health but didn't like eating. It made her doubt whether her pastries were just too bad. Gu Jiao's appreciation was not feigned. She genuinely found the pastries tasty. The lady found fulfillment in Gu Jiao's appreciation. She couldn't help but look at Gu Jiao more closely, noticing the birthmark on her face, which she had noticed already. Such a good young lady, it's such a pity, the lady quietly regretted. Then she noticed Gu Jiao's hands. They were the hands of someone who had labored for many years with calluses and crisscrossing scars. The lady thought of her own daughter, thankful that she was born in the Marquis residence, where she didn't have to suffer the hardships of ordinary folks. If not, as a mother, she wouldn't be able to bear the heartache. Gu Jiao sat in the lady's room for a while, and all the chestnut cakes had gone into her belly, and the presiding abbot had just returned to the temple. In the end, Gu Jiao didn't forget her main business. After bidding farewell to the lady, she went to the abbot's meditation room. The abbot was quite old, with a white beard, but he was astoundingly energetic, probably a result of his years of martial arts practice. Gu Jiao briefly stated her intention. "I wonder if the abbot would be willing to sell?" After she had finished speaking, she did not hear the abbot's answer for quite a while. Looking closely, she saw that the abbot was staring at her face without blinking. Just as Gu Jiao was about to ask, "Is there something on my face?" she remembered, there was indeed something on her face, wasn't there? "Abbot?" Gu Jiao reminded. "Ahem ahem." The abbot returned to his senses, cleared his throat and sat upright, saying, "You just said, you want to buy the mountain?" Gu Jiao, "Yes." "Abbot, how old are you this year?" Isn't the topic changing too quickly? Can I buy a mountain because I'm too young?" Gu Jiao asked blandly. No. Amitabha, young benefactor, please do not misunderstand." The abbot placed his hand on his chest and said, "The brother Jingxin who manages the temple's property is not here. It will take him 2 or 3 days to return. Why not come back in a few days?" "Okay, I will find a day to visit again before the year ends." After Gu Jiao had spoken, she stood up to take her leave. The abbot's gaze remained fixed on her birthmark. Gu Jiao frowned slightly. "Abbot, although I don't mind how others view me as a monk, isn't it inappropriate for you to keep staring at others' flaws?" The abbot hurriedly apologized. The old monk was rude. "Please, young benefactor, do not take offense." After Gu Jiao left, the abbot remained dazed for a long time. One of his disciples came up and asked, "Abbot, what's wrong?" "I remembered something," the abbot replied. "What is it?" the disciple asked. The abbot heaved a long sigh and said, "It's something from many years ago. One night, he had drunk too much and accidentally left a mark using a special kind of ointment on the face of a newly born baby girl. The next day when he woke up and recalled the foolish thing he had done, he quickly went to apologize to the lady of Marquis residence. But he found that the face of the baby in her arms was clean and without any trace of the ointment. Since he had been drunk, his memory was not very clear. He thought that since the baby girl's face did not bear any mark, it meant he must not have done it, right? After so many years had passed, he had completely forgotten about it. But when he saw that girl earlier, memories rushed back and he began to question whether or not he had left a mark on someone's face that night. But wait, the baby he marked was the daughter of Marquis residence, and that girl just now mentioned she was a villager at the foot of the mountain. After leaving the abbot's meditation room, Gu Jiao went to find the lady she had met earlier. However, she was told that the lady had already descended the mountain. These few boxes of pastries were left for you, the benefactor, by the lady. Please, you must accept them. The monk who cleaned the meditation room handed Gu Jiao a large bundle. Gu Jiao held it and felt its weight and knew that the lady had left all the pastries for her. Gu Jiao sighed lightly. She hadn't returned the lady's clothes yet. The clothes given to her by the lady were beautiful, but they were not suitable for climbing the mountain road. She estimated it would snag after a few steps. This couldn't be blamed on bad quality. After all, those who could afford such material would not need to walk themselves. On the way home, Gu Jiao walked quite fast because she was somewhat worried that the old lady might not get along with the next-door family. After all, the old lady was bad-tempered, always finding faults with others, belonging to the extremely unsociable type. To her surprise, when Gu Jiao entered the house, she was stunned. What's happening? Why are there so many people? And they're all women? Neither Gu Jiao nor Xiao Lulang usually interacted with the villagers. In the past, the villagers would only come over when they needed to write or read a letter. The record was 3 visits in a day, not more. So, Gu Jiao didn't understand why their main hall was suddenly filled with so many people. The old lady was sitting domineering at the top chair. Uncle Luo's wife was by her side, holding a pot of tea in a very beguiling manner. On the other side was Gui Fong, the young wife from Aunt Zhang's family. Gui Fong was holding a tray with melon seeds and a cup of tea. Gu Jiao was even more puzzled. Didn't Sister Gui Fong just give birth? The rest of the people seemed to not have the privilege to come near, so they stood across, pushing and squeezing each other, looking like a village version of a palace drama. All right, you all may leave. The old lady put down the melon seeds, waved her hand. Everyone withdrew, but before leaving, they all paid respect to the old lady with their heads tilted. Seeing the imperial concubines bowing was a pleasing sight, but seeing a group of women from the village bowing, that was a large-scale accident sight. Gu Jiao was utterly shocked. She grabbed Xuaningxiang, who was nearby, and asked, "What did my grandmother do this time?" Xuaningxiang couldn't hide her admiration and said, "Grandmother was telling stories to the villagers. She told it so well." Gu Jiao twitched at the corner of her mouth. "And the part about paying respect, what's that about?" Xuaningxiang thought for a while before understanding what Gu Jiao meant. "Oh, you mean that? That was taught by grandmother. She said that's how they do it in the theater. Performers in the theater definitely do not do that. Grandmother was brazenly deceiving everyone into paying respect to her." Gu people of ancient times loved watching operas. After all, there wasn't much else they could do, especially women. In the countryside, it was quite difficult to see an opera. The nearest theater was in the town, and it would take quite a few copper plates to get in, a luxury the country folk couldn't afford. The elderly lady, though unable to sing, could narrate, and quite in detail too. "Where did you hear these operas from?" Gu Jiao leaned in to ask. "I don't remember." The elderly lady shook her head. Seeing that the old lady didn't look like she was lying, Gu Jiao continued. "Do you remember anything else?" The elderly lady thought hard. "No more." Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao asked again. "Can you stop bamboozling people in the future?" The elderly lady took her time to think again. "No." Gu Jiao. The end of the year was coming, and Gu Jiao became busier, having less time to constantly watch over the old lady. Although the old lady occasionally acted weird, she was mostly able to contain herself, not causing any trouble for Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang. Gu Jiao went to the temple once more afterwards. The master in charge of the treasury had yet to return, so Gu Jiao decided to visit again after the new year. The academy had another exam before the new year. Most likely due to the influence of the theft incident, Gu Dashuan's performance was significantly worse this time, dropping him to 10th in the class. The performance of Gu Shaoshan remained stable, perpetually at the bottom. Xiao Lulang advanced 1 rank. But that was not because he did well, it was because the original 2nd last and 4th last were absent due to illness, and he tied with Gu Shaoshan for the bottom position. Many teachers at the academy knew about Xiao Liulang's admission essay. But since then he had never written any essays, basically turning in blank papers during exams. Some people suspected that he had exhausted his talents, others suspected that he cheated to get into the academy, but Headmaster Li remained steadfast, believing in Xiao Liulang's talent. No matter what others said, he didn't want to give up on Xiao Lulang. The imperial examination takes place every 3 years. The autumn examination will be held next year. If they miss it, they will have to wait for the next one after 3 years. Those who participate in the autumn examination must be degree holders, that is, scholars. There will be a county examination shortly after the new year. Headmaster Li hesitated for a bit, then took the initiative to register Xiao Lulang. Gu Jiao, unaware of all this, was preparing for the upcoming surgery. She needed to ensure a good night's sleep and adjust herself to be in top form. She had performed this type of surgery countless times in her previous life, so she shouldn't be burdened by it. But performing surgery on a stranger and on Xiao Lulang were two different things. She couldn't afford having any regrets on such a perfect person. Before sleep, Gu Jiao checked the first aid kit. As expected, all the anesthesia and injections needed for the surgery had appeared. These medicines were not the kind sold in pharmacies in her previous life, but were from the research institute. Gu Jiao seriously suspected that as long as the research institute doesn't close, her medical kit would continue to be replenished. Well, it's good news. Gu Jiao had a good night's sleep, prepared breakfast after waking up, and started brewing the medicine for the old lady. When Gu Jiao brought the medicine to the old lady's room, the old lady hesitated, looking at the pills in the plate and then at the medicine in the bowl. She frowned. Why do I feel that this medicinal soup is optional? You're overthinking it. The medicinal soup is as important as the pills, Gu Jiao said, keeping a straight face. The old lady cautiously drank the pills and soup, suffering from the bitterness. She severely suspected that Gu Jiao was taking revenge for her past eccentricities. Gu Jiao once again left the old lady in the care of Xuaningxiang. Then she and Xiao Lulang got on Uncle Luo's ox cart to go to the medical hall. Fen Lin naturally couldn't miss such an important day. He had been waiting at the medical hall early in the morning. As the weather was getting colder, he didn't like to wait inside, thus freezing into a small icicle outside. As soon as he saw the young couple on the ox cart, his face darkened. He had an impulse to curse at the shameless couple, but he held back. Xiao Lulang did nothing wrong. It was just this woman becoming more and more shameless, always clinging to Xiao Lulang. Gu Jiao, seeing Fen Lin, remained indifferent. Didn't you go home for the new year? Fen Lin humphed. My home is so far away. How would I go back? Only then did Gu Jiao remember that transportation in ancient times was inconvenient. A journey that would only take a day by high-speed rail in her previous life could take a month here. Fen Lin might not even have reached home when the New Year holiday would end. Gu Jiao, oh. Fen Lin, feeling like he had punched cotton. The surgery date had been fixed in advance, and the shopkeeper Wang and the old doctor had been waiting in the consulting hall since dawn. Fen Lin and Gu Jiao both followed them in. The old doctor first asked about Xiao Liulang's medicinal fumigation at home in the past few days. I have been fumigated with medicine before going to sleep every night, Xiao Lulang truthfully responded. Every evening when he would return from school, Gu Jiao would already have prepared his meal and medicine. The old doctor nodded in acknowledgement. Fen Lin said, Dr. Zhang, is Xiao Liulang's leg almost recovered? The old doctor replied, we will only know after the surgery. What? Surgery? Fen Lin was dumbfounded. A trace of astonishment also flashed in Xiao Liulang's eyes. Gu Jiao was worried about this kind of reaction, which was why she hadn't told them. Surgery was not a common concept in this era, and public acceptance was low. Most believe it was only used on the battlefield. Fen Lin said in alarm, Dr. Zhang, you didn't mention this before. Of course, the old doctor wouldn't spill the truth, and instead said with a serious face, we didn't have the conditions to perform it at the time. Now, after a period of medicinal fumigation, Xiao Liulang's meridians are open and he's ready for surgery. But this was a big deal. It involved using a knife on a person's body. Fen Lin was very hesitant. Is there no other way besides surgery? The old doctor nodded. Will it definitely be successful? Fen Lin asked again. That can't be guaranteed. The old doctor answered honestly. If it's successful, he'll be able to walk normally again. If it fails, he might be worse off than he is now. That was exactly what Gu Jiao had said earlier. Even if she was the most skilled doctor of the research institute, she couldn't confidently say that there was absolutely no risk in any surgery. Xiao Lulang, Finlin was looking to back out. He was a conservative and was not willing to take such a big risk. However, Xiao Lulang gave a faint smile and lazily said, "Then let's go ahead with the surgery." "Thank you, Dr. Zhang." He agreed so quickly that even Gu Jiao looked at him. In fact, even after spending so much time together, Gu Jiao never really understood him. However, for a moment there, it seemed as if she felt a trace of cold indifference on him. It was as if he didn't care at all if the surgery might fail. Was he really that bold, or did he just not care about his own life? Finlin made eye contact with Gu Jiao, hoping she could persuade Xiao Lulang. However, Gu Jiao pretended not to see him, infuriating Finlin. Before the surgery, the old doctor handed over a strange document, causing Xiao Lulang to falter. "What's this?" he asked. The old doctor coughed lightly. "It's a surgery consent form, and a family member needs to sign it." This was puzzling. He had been a doctor for decades and had never heard of such a thing. However, it was strongly requested by Miss Gu, so they had no choice but to comply. Finlin couldn't sign the document, Xiao Lulang himself couldn't either, so now it was Dr. Gu who was going to experience what it was like to be a family member. She then realized in dismay that she didn't know how to write her own name. How sad, isn't it? Didn't they think of this problem when they asked the second shopkeeper to prepare the surgery consent form? If she wrote her name, Gu Jiao, hastily with the ink pen she used in her last life, wouldn't it be regarded as gibberish? The scariest thing was the sudden silence. Gu Jiao held her pen, scratching her head and cheeks in frustration, her face flushing red. The plan to show off in front of Xiao Lulang backfired. Xiao Lulang glanced at Gu Jiao, assuming her ability to write based on how well she was holding the pen. In the end, Xiao Lulang ended up signing Gu Jiao's name on her behalf. Xiao Lulang was then taken to a specially arranged room. Using the calming soup on multiple occasions could easily give the game away, so this time, the old doctor handed him a bowl of ma fei san, an ancient anesthesia. The ma fei san, an ancient anesthetic, was reportedly invented by the miraculous Dr. Huato. The original recipe was lost, so nowadays, most doctors use medicine made from mandala flower powder or juice. This type of medicine not only numbs and calms the patient but also causes muscle relaxation and inhibits the sweat glands. That's why it's also called the paralysis medicine. The paralysis medicine was highly poisonous, so of course, Gu Jiao wouldn't use it on Xiao Lulang. The medicine in the bowl was actually the calming medicine from the Huichun Hall. Xiao Lulang fell into a deep sleep shortly after drinking it. Gu Jiao made an excuse to leave Finlin behind. This time, it was going to take longer than before, so instead of excusing herself saying she needed to use the restroom, she said she was going to browse street shops to see if there were any holiday goods to buy. Finlin was livid. He had just let Xiao Lulang go, and now he's about to be operated on. And what's she doing? Going shopping? She was indeed a heartless woman. From the back door, Gu Jiao returned to Huichun Hall. The old doctor was already waiting for her at the door of the room. The old doctor was an old staffer of the Huichun Hall and had been working here for no less than 30 years. His medical skills might not match those of Dr. Zhang's in Capital City, but he was an absolute gentleman in his field. Otherwise, the second shopkeeper would not have trusted him to be part of this. The old doctor was extremely curious about this surgery, so much so he was considering accompanying Gu Jiao inside. However, Gu Jiao seemed to have no clue of his intentions and closed the door as soon as she entered the room. The old doctor. Gu Jiao felt sorry for the old doctor. She decided to give him a few medical prescriptions as a gesture of gratitude later. As for the secret of her first aid kit, she had no intention of letting anyone else know, at least for now. Gu Jiao opened the first aid kit and first gave Xiao Lulang a local anesthetic. 2 hours later, Gu Jiao came out with a small basket on her back. The old doctor and the second shopkeeper quickly approached, asking in unison, "How's the surgery?" Gu Jiao nodded. The surgery was very successful. Her operation was faultless, but the recovery time varies from person to person. Also, his ankle had been injured for a long time. Even if the surgery was successful, he would have to undergo a long period of rehabilitation for his legs and feet. At least, if the surgery was successful, he would no longer be in pain. Thinking about how he endured pain day and night, always going to fetch water and firewood, doing everything he could, Gu Jiao couldn't help but feel mixed emotions. If she had known about the pain he was in, she wouldn't have considered his pride and not let him do anything. When Xiao Lulang woke up, the old doctor was still by his side. The old doctor told him the situation. The surgery was very successful. He advised him to go home, rest, and return after 10 days. Remember, during these 10 days, you must avoid exerting force, stay in bed as much as possible, and avoid spicy food and alcohol. Suddenly, Xiao Lulang made a confused noise, looking at the old doctor in a haze. Thinking Xiao Lulang might not have understood, the old doctor laughed. When I said you should avoid alcohol, it means you are not to drink any. You're young, you shouldn't even be drinking when you're not sick. Xiao Lulang nodded. Once the old doctor finished speaking, he signaled to his colleague from the grand hall to call for Fen Lin and Gu Jiao. The first thing Fen Lin said when he hurried into the room was, "You're still alive, aren't you, Xiao Lulang?" Gu Jiao rolled her eyes at him, following closely behind Fen Lin. Fen Lin walked to Xiao Liulang's bedside, intending to check his injuries, but they were already all bandaged up, leaving only layers of gauze visible. "Does it hurt?" Fen Lin asked. The anesthesia had worn off, and he was feeling some pain. However, he has gotten used to the pain by now. So, he shook his head. "It doesn't." The old doctor had already informed Fen Lin of Xiao Liulang's condition while he was still unconscious, so Fen Lin wasn't particularly worried. Fen Lin made eye contact with Gu Jiao, hoping she could persuade Xiao Lulang. However, Gu Jiao pretended not to see him, infuriating Fen Lin. Before the surgery, the old doctor handed over a strange document, causing Xiao Lulang to falter. "What's this?" he asked. The old doctor coughed lightly. "It's a surgery consent form, and a family member needs to sign it." This was puzzling. He had been a doctor for decades and had never heard of such a thing. However, it was strongly requested by Miss Gu, so they had no choice but to comply. Fen Lin couldn't sign the document, Xiao Lulang himself couldn't either, so now it was Dr. Gu who was going to experience what it was like to be a family member. She then realized in dismay that she didn't know how to write her own name. How sad, isn't it? Didn't they think of this problem when they asked the second shopkeeper to prepare the surgery consent form? If she wrote her name, Gu Jiao, hastily with the ink pen she used in her last life, wouldn't it be regarded as gibberish? The scariest thing was the sudden silence. Gu Jiao held her pen, scratching her head and cheeks in frustration, her face flushing red. The plan to show off in front of Xiao Lulang backfired. Xiao Lulang glanced at Gu Jiao, assuming her ability to write based on how well she was holding the pen. In the end, Xiao Lulang ended up signing Gu Jiao's name on her behalf. Xiao Lulang was then taken to a specially arranged room. Using the calming soup on multiple occasions could easily give the game away, so this time, the old doctor handed him a bowl of ma fei san, an ancient anesthesia. The ma fei san, an ancient anesthetic, was reportedly invented by the miraculous Dr. Huato. The original recipe was lost, so nowadays, most doctors use medicine made from mandala flower powder or juice. This type of medicine not only numbs and calms the patient but also causes muscle relaxation and inhibits the sweat glands. That's why it's also called the paralysis medicine. The paralysis medicine was highly poisonous, so of course, Gu Jiao wouldn't use it on Xiao Lulang. The medicine in the bowl was actually the calming medicine from the Huichun Hall. Xiao Lulang fell into a deep sleep shortly after drinking it. Gu Jiao made an excuse to leave Fen Lin behind. This time, it was going to take longer than before, so instead of excusing herself saying she needed to use the restroom, she said she was going to browse street shops to see if there were any holiday goods to buy. Fen Lin was livid. He had just let Xiao Lulang go, and now he's about to be operated on. And what's she doing? Going shopping? She was indeed a heartless woman. From the back door, Gu Jiao returned to Huichun Hall. The old doctor was already waiting for her at the door of the room. The old doctor was an old staffer of the Huichun Hall and had been working here for no less than 30 years. His medical skills might not match those of Dr. Zhang's in Capital City, but he was an absolute gentleman in his field. Otherwise, the second shopkeeper would not have trusted him to be part of this. The old doctor was extremely curious about this surgery, so much so he was considering accompanying Gu Jiao inside. However, Gu Jiao seemed to have no clue of his intentions and closed the door as soon as she entered the room. The old doctor Gu Jiao felt sorry for the old doctor. She decided to give him a few medical prescriptions as a gesture of gratitude later. As for the secret of her first aid kit, she had no intention of letting anyone else know, at least for now. Gu Jiao opened the first aid kit and first gave Xiao Lulang a local anesthetic. 2 hours later, Gu Jiao came out with a small basket on her back. The old doctor and the second shopkeeper quickly approached, asking in unison, "How's the surgery?" Gu Jiao nodded. The surgery was very successful. Her operation was faultless, but the recovery time varies from person to person. Also, his ankle had been injured for a long time. Even if the surgery was successful, he would have to undergo a long period of rehabilitation for his legs and feet. At least, if the surgery was successful, he would no longer be in pain. Thinking about how he endured pain day and night, always going to fetch water and firewood, doing everything he could, Gu Jiao couldn't help but feel mixed emotions. If she had known about the pain he was in, she wouldn't have considered his pride and not let him do anything. When Xiao Lulang woke up, the old doctor was still by his side. The old doctor told him the situation. The surgery was very successful. He advised him to go home, rest, and return after 10 days. Remember, during these 10 days, you must avoid exerting force, stay in bed as much as possible, and avoid spicy food and alcohol. Suddenly, Xiao Lulang made a confused noise, looking at the old doctor in a haze. Thinking Xiao Lulang might not have understood, the old doctor laughed. "When I said you should avoid alcohol, it means you are not to drink any. You're young, you shouldn't even be drinking when you're not sick." Xiao Lulang nodded. Once the old doctor finished speaking, he signaled to his colleague from the Grand Hall to call for Fen Lin and Gu Jiao. The first thing Fen Lin said when he hurried into the room was, "You're still alive, aren't you, Xiao Lulang?" Gu Jiao rolled her eyes at him, following closely behind Fen Lin. Fen Lin walked to Xiao Liulang's bedside, intending to check his injuries, but they were already all bandaged up, leaving only layers of gauze visible. "Does it hurt?" Fen Lin asked. The anesthesia had worn off, and he was feeling some pain. However, he has gotten used to the pain by now. So, he shook his head. "It doesn't." The old doctor had already informed Fen Lin of Xiao Liulang's condition while he was still unconscious, so Fen Lin wasn't particularly worried. Suddenly recalling something, he turned his head fiercely, glaring at Gu Jiao. "You weren't here when Dr. Zhang spoke just now. You didn't hear what he said. Let me repeat it to you, remember it?" He repeated the old doctor's words verbatim to Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao listened very attentively. The old doctor at the side was sweating coldly. "Kid, you probably don't realize that these instructions are from her. Deep." By the time they left the medical hall, it was getting late. Uncle Luo helped Fen Lin support Xiao Lulang onto the ox cart, after which Uncle Luo first took Fen Lin back to the academy, and then returned with Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang to the village. Midway, Gu Jiao and Xiao Liulang's stomachs growled in unison. The two had eaten breakfast before leaving, but after being busy all day, they forgot about lunch. The sky was overcast, suggesting it was going to snow. Gu Jiao thought for a moment and said to Xiao Lulang, "It's about to snow. We won't eat outside. Let me go buy a few green onion pancakes first." There happened to be a place selling green onion pancakes nearby. Xiao Lulang nodded. The place that sold green onion pancakes was just around the corner they were passing by. Gu Jiao lightly jumped off the cart and strode confidently toward the shop. Perhaps because she was walking too quickly, she was knocked into by someone. For the record, this time it wasn't her purposely bumping into someone else, but someone else purposely bumping into her. It wasn't as if she was only a doctor in her previous life. Did they really think such a minor trick could deceive her? The people who took advantage of her hadn't been born yet. The person who bumped into Gu Jiao quickly disappeared into the crowd. Gu Jiao sneered, looked at the ground, nudged a stone with her toes, and then kicked it with the tip of her shoe. The stone shot out and hit the man's head right on target. "Ah!" The man screamed and fell down, and then turned his head to see Gu Jiao, looking like a miniature Grim Reaper, standing behind the crowd. Perhaps it was the piercing power of her gaze that penetrated through the crowd, striking the pickpocket's eyes like a blade. The pickpocket instinctively sensed danger and scrambled up to run. No one had ever escaped from Gu Jiao before. Gu Jiao chased him into a side alley. The pickpocket summoned all his strength, But Gu Jiao kept gaining on him, and in his panic, he seemed to have chosen a dead-end street. There was no way out ahead. The pickpocket panicked and pulled out a dagger hidden in his sleeve as his blood surged. "Stay back, or I'll kill you," he roared in anger. Gu Jiao didn't even blink. With one foot on the wall, she sprang up and in a flash kicked the dagger from the pickpocket's hand, sending it flying off. The pickpocket's eyes widened. In the next second, Gu Jiao landed a kick on his chest before he could even cry out, sending him sprawling on the ground. Gu Jiao walked over coldly, used her foot to turn him over, and picked up the purse that had fallen from his sleeve. Xiao Lulang was still waiting in the ox cart, so she didn't have time to waste on the thief. She didn't intend to report to the officials and was about to leave when the thief quietly grabbed the dagger from the ground. However, before he could attack, Gu Jiao stepped on his wrist, instantly breaking his bones. "Ah!" The pickpocket screamed miserably. He didn't understand how she had done it. She hadn't even looked back. Did she have eyes in the back of her head? "Catch him!" Suddenly, several men rushed in from the end of the alley. After giving Gu Jiao a cursory glance, they dashed towards the pickpocket. "Did you find it?" A panting young master arrived at that moment. Perhaps he had run too fast and was now out of energy. He leaned against the wall, gasping for air. Gu Jiao walked past him. He suddenly spoke. "Miss Gu?" Gu Jiao stopped and looked at him. "Young Master Xiaoqin?" The town was so small that she could bump into him even while catching a thief. On the other side, the wardens who had seized the pickpocket came back. One of them handed a scroll to young Master Xiaoqin, saying, "Young Master, we've found it." "That quickly? Wasn't it said that habitual thieves are hard to catch?" Young Master Xiaoqin took the scroll. The warden glanced at Gu Jiao and said, "She caught him." After the last incident, young Master Xiaoqin's impression of Gu Jiao had changed. Although Gu Jiao had extorted him 100 taels of silver, he preferred her money-minded side to being beaten up by her. "Thank you again," young Master Xiaoqin politely said. Gu Jiao glanced at him. "Why do you keep getting robbed?" Young Master Xiaoqin embarrassingly answered, "I suppose the news leaked, and I was targeted by the rival." He didn't specify what news, and Gu Jiao didn't ask. Gu Jiao simply wanted to retrieve her purse and didn't care about anything else. She ignored young Master Xiaoqin and left without showing any emotion. Watching her unhesitant figure, young Master Xiaoqin furrowed his brows in confusion. Was she truly not interested in him anymore? "Young Master." Another guard ran up. "I found a handkerchief on the ground. Could it belong to the young lady just now?" Young Master Xiaoqin immediately took the handkerchief and chased after Gu Jiao. When he finally found Gu Jiao, she had already bought green onion pancakes and was back in the ox cart. "Miss Gu! Miss Gu!" Young Master Xiaoqin, a pampered scholar, had drained all his energy while chasing the thief. His pursuit now was solely powered by willpower. He was panting heavily, leaning against the ox cart, unable to speak for quite some time. The gaze of Xiao Lulang turned somewhat cold. Gu Jiao shrugged, feigning innocence with a look saying, "This has nothing to do with me. I don't know him." "You need something?" Xiao Lulang asked indifferently. Young Master Xiaoqin was startled by the sound, looked at Xiao Lulang, and an embarrassed expression appeared on his face. "Ah, Master Xiao is here too." "Xiao Lulang, so you chased after me while I was away?" Young Master Xiaoqin handed over the handkerchief in his hand. "Miss Gu, you dropped your handkerchief?" Gu Jiao took a look and said, "It's not mine." "Ah." Young Master Xiaoqin became even more embarrassed. He had chased all the way and it was not hers, feeling somewhat ashamed. In his haste, young Master Xiaoqin tilted, and the painting in his arms fell out, landing precisely on the ox cart, spreading out at Xiao Liulang's feet. It was a painting of the misty rain in Jiangnan, featuring mountains, rivers, and a canopy boat in the rain. Even Gu Jiao, who knew nothing about calligraphy and painting, thought this painting was full of rich and expressive strokes, creating a far-reaching artistic conception. Obtaining this painting was not easy. His father had instructed him to take good care of it after he got it, not to be seen by others. Now that the painting was suddenly exposed, young Master Xiaoqin was originally quite nervous, but seeing Gu Jiao staring at the painting with evident curiosity, he suddenly did not rush to collect the painting. He proudly said, This is a masterpiece by the young master of Zhaodu. It's called Spring Mountains in Misty Rain, drawn by young master during his travels in Jiangnan when he was 12. The young master's paintings are priceless, and I bought it for a high price from a friend. Gu Jiao picked up the painting, her eyes widened. He could paint so well at 12? Her shocked look was rather charming, and even the red birthmark on her face didn't look ugly in young master Xiaoqin's eyes. Young master Xiaoqin then boasted even more. This was just a casual sketch of his. Allegedly, he discarded it for not being satisfied with it, and it was secretly preserved by a servant. If you like it, you can take a longer look at it. Gu Jiao. Xiao Liulong's glance lightly swept over the painting, and he casually said, "It's a fake." It took young master Xiaoqin a moment to realize that he was referring to the painting before he stamped his feet. Nonsense. This painting is clearly authentic. How can it be a fake? Xiao Lulang said, "It's a fake." Young master Xiaoqin raised his voice. "How can you tell it's a fake?" Xiao Lulang seemed to think it was a waste to even glance at him. "How can't you tell it's a fake?" This comment was too arrogant, as if implying that the painting was atrociously forged, full of flaws at every spot. Young master Xiaoqin finally couldn't restrain his anger. "What do you know? Do you, a poor scholar, understand painting? I've had it professionally appraised. This is indeed the young master's work. He never painted this one," Xiao Lulang nonchalantly said. "How do you know he didn't paint it? Do you know him?" As soon as he said this, young master Xiaoqin laughed himself. How could a country cripple possibly know the prestigious young master of Zhaodu? The master of Zhaodu has many sons, and each one a young master. But there is only one who gets addressed as the young master of Zhaodu. Young master of Zhaodu is the legitimate son of the Duke of Xianping. His birth mother is Princess Xinyang. Both are greatly loved by the current emperor. He ascended to Jinwan Hall at the age of 3, becoming famous after a battle with a group of scholars. He entered the Guozijian at 4 years old, read through the National Book Hall at 5 years old, and mastered the languages of 6 nations. The head of Tianxiang Academy is on the list of the 4 top scholars of capital city because one has to be at least 18 to make the list, and his imperial examination scores remain unsurpassed because this young master has never participated in it. He was appointed as the libationer of Guozijian by the emperor at the age of 12, and emissaries from 5 nations came to congratulate this young libationer, a truly resplendent and unparalleled figure in Zhaodu. Unfortunately, the young master, despite his unparalleled origin and brilliance, tragically died in a sudden fire at the Guozijian and was reportedly burned alive. He died on New Year's Eve, only 14 years old. Xiao Lulang did not bring this up because he was close to him. If he doesn't believe me, then forget it. Gu Jiao originally admired that painting, but when she heard that it was a fake, she lost interest and returned it to young Master Qin. Young Master Qin looked at her disdainful expression and tried to defend it. "Don't listen to him. This painting is real." Gu Jiao said firmly, "If my husband says it's fake, it's fake." Gu. Young Master Qin was really furious. If it was the past, he would not care how an ugly little girl looked at his painting. However, today, for some reason, he did not want to embarrass himself in front of her. Young Master Qin straightened his back. "It's real. He hasn't seen the world and doesn't know anything about art." "You're the one who hasn't seen the world." Gu Jiao refused to allow anyone to degrade her hubby like this. Previously, when young Master Qin came to look for Gu Jiao to get the letter, Xiao Lulang only heard about what happened after the incident. Now, he really experienced Gu Jiao's coldness towards young Master Qin for himself. She actually quarreled with young Master Qin for his sake. Xiao Lulang looked at Gu Jiao thoughtfully, then suddenly reminded young Master Qin, "If you intend to gift this painting, I advise you not to make a fool of yourself." With that, Xiao Lulang said to second Uncle Luo, "Let's go back, second Uncle Luo." "All right." Second Uncle Luo did not get involved in young people's affairs, and rode the ox cart away with a grin. Young Master Qin looked at the backs of the two, eating scallion pancakes in the cold wind. He was so angry that he really wanted to curse them. However, this matter still left a thorn in his heart. When he brought the painting back to the Qin household, his father could not wait to welcome him. "How did it go? Did you find the painting?" I did find it. Young Master Qin wanted to say something, but hesitated. His father panicked. What happened? It's not torn, is it? It's not torn. With a sigh, young Master Qin eventually told his father what Xiao Lulang had said. His father was even more unyielding than him. And you believe the words of a damn cripple? He's a student of the Divine Academy. Young Master Qin had seen Xiao Lulang when he went to look for Gu Jiao to get the letter. At that time, Xiao Lulang was wearing the uniform of the Divine Academy. So what if he's a student of the Divine Academy? His father said disdainfully. They're all very amazing, young Master Qin said. His father said nonchalantly, aren't you amazing too? I spent a lot to hire a teacher for you from the capital. There's no way you're inferior to them. Besides, they're all bookworms who only know how to study and have never experienced the world. Young Master Qin thought to himself, that's what I said back then as well. Young Master Qin was actually a very prideful person. If it was someone else who had reminded him like that, he would not have listened at all. However, Xiao Liulong's gaze and presence at that time were inexplicably convincing. In the end, young Master Qin could not convince his father. He watched helplessly as his father wrapped up the painting and got someone to send it to the nobles in the capital. It snowed for 3 days in a row, the roads in the village were closed, and the ox cart could not move. Many of the villagers originally wanted to go to the market to do some business before the new year, but due to the heavy snow they could only put it aside. For the past few days, everyone had been cooped up at home, and no one had come to look for the old lady to listen to her opera. The old lady was bored, so she asked Gu Jiao to call Xuaningxiang over. The old lady did not know that Xuaningxiang and Gu Jiao had argued with each other in the past. When she arrived, their relationship had already improved. Moreover, ever since Xuaningxiang encountered the lechers, she had been avoiding men. She did not have a good impression of Xiao Lulang at all. On the other hand, she clung to Gu Jiao from time to time, making the old lady wonder if this young widow had taken a fancy to her granddaughter-in-law. However, Xuaningxiang's needlework was good and she was well-groomed, so the old lady still welcomed her. Before New Year's, her brother-in-law at the border sent a letter to her family. Xuaningxiang could not read, so she went to look for Gu Jiao. Of course, Gu Jiao can't read either, but what gave you the impression that I suddenly can read? You actually brought the letter to me. Gu Jiao was at a loss. Seeing Gu Jiao frown, Xuaningxiang said in a panic, You're not stupid anymore, so I thought you could read too. Gu Jiao, just because I'm no longer stupid, doesn't mean I can suddenly read. However, Xuaningxiang did not want to trouble Xiao Lulang. Firstly, the shadow in her heart had not completely healed. Secondly, she knew that she was wrong in the past, so she wanted to avoid being close with Xiao Lulang now. Xuaningxiang lowered her head, not knowing what to do. Gu Jiao scratched her head woefully. If Xuaningxiang had been unreasonable with her, she would definitely refuse her outright. However, Xuaningxiang was being meek, so she could not find it in herself to reject her. Gu Jiao told herself that it was not because she was soft. It was only because Xuaningxiang had helped her with a lot of needlework. She was a very useful neighbor. She also wanted to be a useful neighbor for Xuaningxiang as well, in exchange for her helping with all the needlework at home in the future. Gu Jiao took the letter to Xiao Liulong's room. She no longer needed to knock when she entered his room. Xiao Lulang had been recuperating in bed for the past few days. Knowing that he had to study, Gu Jiao personally made a small table that could be placed on the bed, and he was practicing calligraphy on it. A 17-year-old young man, with a slim figure, cool eyes, petite wrists, and an elegant presence. How could there be such a good-looking person in this world? Gu Jiao rubbed her chin. What's the matter? Xiao Lulang noticed and turned to look at her. Gu Jiao had stared at him a few times and was caught red-handed every time. However, she had never once been embarrassed for it. She walked over casually and sat down on the other side of the small table. Handing the letter to him, she said, "Can you read this letter for me?" As she spoke, Gu Jiao saw some red paper on the small table. What's this? It's red paper. Feng Lin gave it to me, Xiao Lulang said, as if he was explaining that he did not buy it. Gu Jiao did not care where it came from, and asked curiously, "What's it for?" Xiao Lulang thought for a moment and said, for paper cuts to decorate the windows, and for writing couplets. Gu Jiao's eyes instantly lit up. She had never done paper cuts or put up couplets. In her previous life, she had seen others putting them up. She had always been envious, but in her understanding, those were things that a family would do when they had their annual reunion. She did not have a family, so she had never done such a thing. Do you want to write some? Xiao Lulang asked. I don't know how to. Gu Jiao lowered her head, touching her fingers. Xiao Lulang remembered how she had pointed at the words on a prescription and asked him how to read them. He also remembered how she had grabbed the pen without a word to sign his surgery consent form. So she wanted to learn how to write. Gu Jiao, no. I don't want to. Xiao Lulang moved his books and the letter to the bed, and spread out a piece of red paper. I'll teach you. Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao never anticipated that, after spending her past life studying hard for exams to get into university, postgraduate school, then the doctoral program, she would have to start from the basics in her new life in an area she had the least proficiency in Chinese calligraphy. Gu Jiao was feeling utterly dejected and defeated. Even if she did have a beauty by her side who was an absolute feast for the eyes, she didn't want to learn calligraphy. No, not at all. Let's start with your name, said Xiao Lulang. His voice was somewhere between that of a teenager going through puberty and that of a mature man. Rather than sounding like the awful croak of a drake, it had a refreshing baritone quality. Feeling absolutely helpless, Gu Jiao silently watched as he wrote her name on paper. Unlike the sloppy signature she had scrawled on the consent form for the surgery, this time her name seemed more tidy and elegant. Yet Gu Jiao still didn't understand. Gu Jiao was sitting opposite to Xiao Lulang. From her perspective, the characters appeared upside down. Sensing her confusion, Xiao Lulang turned the paper around for Gu Jiao to scrutinize. Afterwards, he meticulously wrote each stroke and their order down for her. Seeing all the strokes, Gu Jiao felt a headache coming on. These weren't traditional characters, nor were they written in regular script or seal script. They were of a style that was entirely unfamiliar to her. Seeing Gu Jiao awkwardly attempting to grip the writing brush, a deep look of misery on her face, Xiao Lulang remarked, your brush holding position is wrong. Move your hand up a bit, your wrist should not be so stiff. Like this? Gu Jiao adjusted her grip as he instructed. In her past life, Gu Jiao actually had a standard grip for holding a pen. But her brush holding skills were obviously lacking in front of Xiao Lulang, a learned scholar from ancient times. The index finger, Xiao Lulang said. Gu Jiao inquired, puzzled. Hesitating for a moment, Xiao Lulang reached out, extending his slender, jade-like finger, gently adjusting her index finger upwards. In any other circumstance, she would have scandalized the situation by exclaiming, he touched my finger, rounding it off counts as holding hands. But right now, he was teaching her literacy. She rounded it off as being in a learning environment, one in which Gu Jiao always maintained an earnest demeanor. Taking off her shoes, she crossed her legs and sat opposite him, diligently practicing each stroke with focus. Xuaningxiang was waiting in the outer room. Why was Gu Jiao taking so long in there? The letter wasn't that long, surely it wouldn't take this long to read? Little did Xuaningxiang know, the pair had completely forgotten all about the letter by now, with one person absorbed in reading, the other engrossed in practicing calligraphy. Every once in a while, Xiao Lulang corrected Gu Jiao's brush-holding technique, but he didn't put pressure on her to improve her handwriting. After all, being able to prevent the ink from spilling outside the paper was an accomplishment in itself for a first-time brush holder. If Gu Jiao were to catch wind of his thoughts, she might blow a fuse. After all, she remembered clearly that she, reigning as an academic overachiever of the modern age, wasn't in any way a calligraphy novice. Nevertheless, Gu Jiao's memory was excellent. She was able to remember the intricate sequences after just writing once. However, the calligraphy was frankly dreadful to look at. From Xiao Liulang's perspective, she resembled a young chick who was just beginning to learn calligraphy. After all, the characters he wrote at the age of 2 looked better than these. The two ended up spending half a 2-hour period together in the room, and it wasn't until the old grandmother, bored and desiring company, decided to visit Gu Jiao that she discovered the two engrossed in writing. The old grandmother didn't venture close enough for a better look, she just glanced from the doorway. Seeing the red-colored paper, she made a quick guess. Writing spring couplets? Right, it is about time, it needs to be done soon. Once you are finished, come to inform me. She wanted a set of spring couplets. This was truly a beautiful misunderstanding. Initially, Gu Jiao had not thought that Xiao Lulang had brought the red paper for anything other than writing spring couplets, but they got distracted by her literacy lesson instead. Now, with the old grandmother's reminder, they decided to get back on track and started to write the spring couplets. I will cut the paper. Gu Jiao put down her brush and rushed off to find a pair of scissors. Gu Jiao thanked her aunt for rescuing her from water and fire. She couldn't continue with the calligraphy any longer, her fingers would be ruined. Xiao Lulang glanced at the red paper before him, a far-off look in his eyes. However, when Gu Jiao returned with neatly cut sheets of red paper and laid them by his side, he distractedly picked up his brush and wrote a few sets of spring couplets. Don't forget to write a few for young Xue too, the old grandmother reminded. The old grandmother was quite fond of Xuaningxiang, as she was of Gu Jiao. Although she didn't say it out loud, Gu Jiao was acutely aware of the goodwill or ill will people had towards her. When she first met Xuaningxiang, there was some hostility on Xue's part. By now, however, all the malice had vanished. The old lady's affection for Xuaningxiang was different from her affection for Gu Jiao. She saw Gu Jiao as family, whereas her affection for Xuaningxiang was that of a host's generosity towards a guest. In other words, she thought Xuaningxiang was a decent guest, well suited for frequent visits. Upon the old lady's reminder, it dawned on them that they had completely forgotten about Xuaningxiang and her letter. Their faces flushed with embarrassment. What frame of mind did Xuaningxiang have while waiting for them in the outer rooms? Half of a 2-hour period later, Gu Jiao arrived at Xuaningxiang's house with her letter, along with spring couplets written by Xiao Lulang himself, as well as a plate of sesame candies and chestnut cakes. Why so much? Xuaningxiang exclaimed, surprised. Gu Jiao couldn't very well admit that she was there to apologize. She replied with a straight face. It's almost New Year's, Aunt asked me to bring them over. She says the spring couplets are for you, the chestnut cakes and sesame candies are for your mother-in-law and your son. Xuaningxiang immediately thanked her. Just now, Gu Jiao hesitated, but decided to give an explanation anyway. Just as she was about to speak, Xuaningxiang flashed her a knowing smile. Gu Jiao wondered, what on earth did she understand? Being a married woman herself, Xuaningxiang could guess exactly why a young wife would spend so long in her husband's room. Why would she be upset about such a thing? The reason she had quietly left instead was to avoid seeing or hearing anything inappropriate. She leaned closer to whisper into Gu Jiao's ear, next time remember to close the door. Your aunt is still in the house. Gu Jiao, I think there might have been a misunderstanding. Apparently, in the letter, Xuaningxiang's brother-in-law had mentioned that he had performed a small merit at the border pass, earning a promotion to corporal, as well as 10 taels of silver as reward. He entrusted all the silver to Xuaningxiang, asking her to take care of his mother and son, and not to neglect herself. He assured her that he would earn more silver in the future and asked her not to be economic with herself. That little brother-in-law is quite a decent man. Gu Jiao asked Xuaningxiang if she wanted to reply, but Xue shook her head. Nowadays, as it was the holiday season, everyone was at home, and there was no one at the post station to deliver the mail. After delivering the things to Xuaningxiang, Gu Jiao returned home. Xuaningxiang accepted the food but only required 1 set of spring couplets, saying that the spring couplets were very expensive. When Gu Jiao explained that they were not bought from the shop, rather Xiao Lulang wrote them, Xuaningxiang countered, the paper used is expensive. As the paper was gifted by Fin Lin in large quantities, Gu Jiao didn't dwell on the price. It was only after she later asked Xiao Lulang did she realize that the paper used to write spring couplets was several times more expensive than ordinary paper. It's not usually this expensive. The price goes up during the new year, Xiao Lulang explained. So, does Fin Lin come from a wealthy family? Gu Jiao asked. Xiao Lulang thought for a moment before shaking his head. I have never asked, but it should not be too good. Fin Lin's financial situation was only slightly better than Xiao Liulang's once was, but it was really not that great. which could be seen from his daily living expenses. However, when it came to things concerning Xiao Lulang, he had always been unconditionally generous. Just take the red paper for this occasion, a dozen pieces costing almost half a tael of silver. Normally, all he ate at the academy was pickled vegetables with a steamed bun. In the evening, the sky started to snow again. Fen Lin was alone at the academy. He was reading in his bedchamber, a single oil lamp not bright enough, but he didn't want to light a second one. There was a cold wind blowing through the door cracks, causing him to shiver. He didn't light a fire because the academy didn't allow it, and he was too frugal to do it. The dormitory was shared by 4 people, and the chill was less noticeable when his classmates were around. But now, being alone, he felt as if all the cold wind blew directly into his stomach. This was his first Lunar New Year away from home. He missed his parents, his sisters back home, but he couldn't go back. Home was so far away, and the travel expenses could be saved. More importantly, he wanted to spend all his time studying, not wishing to stay idle for a day. Being the only son in his family for 3 generations, his sisters were married off to accommodate his education, one to a widower as a second wife, another to a tea merchant over 50 years old. They had sacrificed their lives for him. He couldn't afford not to try. He could not fail to return home with honor. After warming his hands with his breath, Fen Lin wrapped himself up a bit tighter in the quilt and continued to read. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Strange, who would come looking for him at this time? Everyone had already gone home for the holidays, even the teachers had gone home for the new year. An empty academy was remaining, with only him left. Could it be a ghost? He scared himself, his face paling as he wrapped himself tighter in the quilt. Who are you? It's me. A familiar girl's voice came from outside. Fen Lin threw off the quilt, put on his shoes, walked over and opened the door. Seeing Gu Jiao covered in snow, he thought he would rather see a ghost. This is a boys' dormitory. What was she, a woman, doing here? Why are you here? Did something happen to Brother Xiao? Apart from this, Fen Lin couldn't think of any other reason. Without waiting for Gu Jiao to answer, he immediately put on a cloak and asked Gu Jiao, "Where is Brother Xiao?" "At home," Gu Jiao said. Fen Lin left the room without a word. Looking at his hurried back, Gu Jiao calmly said, "There's no carriage." During the Lunar New Year, coupled with the snowy weather, it was impossible to hire any ox or horse carts. Without thinking, Fen Lin replied, "If there's no carriage, can't we walk?" "Hurry up." Gu Jiao, the one who couldn't move wasn't her. The fact proved that Fen Lin had less stamina than Gu Jiao. Along the way, Gu Jiao did not blush or pant, while Fen Lin was on the verge of collapsing several times. When they finally arrived at Gu Jiao and Xiao Liulong's house, Fen Lin felt like his legs weren't his anymore. Using the last bit of his strength to push the door open, he was slightly dumbfounded by the scene inside. Xiao Lulang was sitting in the hall on a chair, watching Grandma teaching Xiaoshun to cut window decorations, looking really healthy and not at all sick. "We're back." Xiao Lulang greeted them. "It's little Fun, take a seat." Grandma also greeted. Xiaoshun typically didn't like Fen Lin, but surprisingly, he didn't give Fen Lin a disdainful look today. Fen Lin was puzzled. He looked at Gu Jiao blankly. "Didn't Brother Xiao?" Gu Jiao shrugged. "You said that, I didn't say anything." Fen Lin. He had never realized before how cunning this woman could be. Fen Lin spent his first Lunar New Year away from home with Gu Jiao and Xiao Luling. Though he initially thought he'd feel ill at ease because of Gu Jiao and Xiaoshun, who he disliked, the atmosphere turned out to be surprisingly harmonious. Gu Jiao cooked dumplings following the village tradition, and also made osmanthus sugar rice cake following his and Xiao Liulong's hometown tradition. As soon as the taste of home hit his tongue, tears welled up in his eyes. It was not because of being moved, but rather because the food was so delicious. Isn't this little witch a local? Why on earth did she make the sugar rice cake so delicious? Fen Lin ate while shedding tears. At first, he was crying simply because of the delicious food. Later, the food evoked memories of his hometown and he started missing his sisters and his old parents back home. He wondered how they were faring during the year he had not been at home. Seeing him crying so pitifully, Xiaoshun, for once, didn't ridicule him, instead giving him his portion of the sugar rice cake. Without a doubt, it was a lively Lunar New Year's Eve, not only for Fan Lin, but also for Gu Jiao and the others. Gu Jiao used to spend New Year's Eve alone in the organization in her previous life. After growing up, she was no longer an experimental object in the organization, but there was still only her in that room she moved to. Xiao Shun used to spend the New Year with the Gu family. The Gu family was bustling, yet no one ever noticed him. For instance, he was certain no one would notice he ran off tonight. Grandma couldn't remember her past New Year's celebrations, but she was happy with this one. She had personally pasted a couplet and taught Xiao Shun, that fool, to cut window decorations, which indeed turned out worse than hers, making her feel better. Besides, Jiao Jiao let her eat 5 pieces of candied fruit. Usually she was only allowed to eat 2. Xiao Lulang was calm. He was never a man to show his emotions, but Gu Jiao could still feel a touch of melancholy emanating from him. More than usual. They stayed up until midnight together. There were only 3 rooms in the house. It was unfair to inconvenience Grandma by sharing a room. Therefore, Gu Jiao tidied up Xiao Liulang's room for Fan Lin to stay for the time being. No matter how close Fan Lin and Xiao Lulang were, he had no idea that the couple hadn't shared a room yet. He readily took the room. This was the second time the couple shared a bed. Gu Jiao's bed was much more spacious than the one at the inn, and the quilt was thicker. The lights went out on Lunar New Year's Eve was not put out. The oil lamp on the table emitted a faint light. Both of them lay in their own bed covers. Xiao Lulang had his eyes closed, but Gu Jiao knew he was not asleep. "Did you enjoy the new year?" Gu Jiao asked quietly. Before Xiao Lulang could answer, a slender hand slipped into his bed covers and held his cold, rigid hand. "Gu Jiao, next year will be better." Xiao Lulang despised New Year's Eve because he would always dream of boundless, raging fires on that night. He tried not to fall asleep, but the moment he closed his eyes, he could deeply feel the despair within that fiery light. "Xiao Lulang, let's make it clear, we are only husband and wife in name. You cannot lay a hand on me," Gu Jiao said seriously. "Who wants to lay a hand on you?" he grumbled, turning his face away. Gu Jiao brought a bowl of water over. "Who can guarantee that you guys say one thing but do another? To prevent you from fooling around, I'll leave a bowl of water here. If you dare to come over and spill this bowl of water in the middle of the night, then you're a beast." "Alright, if I come over, I'm a beast." How could he possibly go over to her? He had absolutely no desire for this woman. The next morning when he woke up, he arrogantly glanced at a bewildered Gu Jiao, as if to say, "See, I'm really not interested in you, right?" Who knew that Gu Jiao, far from being happy, gave him a resounding slap. "You're worse than a beast." Xiao Lulang woke up with a start. He sat up and realized that this wasn't his room. A few crookedly pasted fortune characters were on the wall, and hideous New Year window cutouts were on the window. They were the masterpieces of the old lady and Gu Xiaoshun. Xiao Lulang finally remembered where he was and looked next to him. Gu Jiao was lying on her side facing him, her chubby cheeks squished, and her small mouth was pouting. She had been clutching his hand all night. Xiao Lulang thought about the strange beast dream, his handsome brows knitting. Coldly, he withdrew his hand from Gu Jiao's. Being rejected in her sleep, Gu Jiao grumbled and grabbed his hand again. Xiao Lulang took her hand off once more, but it was useless, and she entwined their fingers again. He didn't know how many times he wrestled with her. In the end, he was the one worn out, and he drifted back into a deep sleep. Until daybreak, the nightmare didn't appear again. Being rejected in her sleep, Gu Jiao grumbled and grabbed his hand again. Xiao Lulang took her hand off once more, but it was useless, and she entwined their fingers again. He didn't know how many times he wrestled with her. In the end, he was the one worn out, and he drifted back into a deep sleep. Until daybreak, the nightmare didn't appear again. For 3 days Fan Lin stayed in Qingchuan village, sleeping in the same bed with Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao for 3 nights. Apart from her holding his hand on the first night, afterwards, they used their limbs lovingly. Each time Xiao Lulang awoke, he would always discover the two of them cuddled together under the quilt. Xiao Lulang would get angry and ask her, "Did you do this on purpose?" Gu Jiao would gaze at him cluelessly, which made Xiao Lulang unsure for a moment who exactly was cheeky while they slept. Maybe he was the one who led her into his arms. Today was the day Xiao Liulong's stitches would be removed. Technically, Gu Jiao could do it at home, but that risked a higher chance of exposure. Moreover, the old lady had also finished her traditional Chinese medicine, and it was time to get a new batch. Though that prescription was only for supplementary treatment, it significantly improved the recovery process. After breakfast, she took Xiao Lulang and Fen Lin to Huichun Hall in town on Uncle Luo's ox cart. Workers had all gone home for the new year, so only the boss, shopkeeper Wang, and the old doctor who had been impersonating a renowned physician for Xiao Lulang remained in Huichun Hall. These three had made a special trip from home, wanting to see the actual effect after removing the stitches. Even Gu Jiao herself was eager for it. She was certain the operation procedure was flawless, but the final recovery level needed to be seen. The stitches were taken out by the old doctor, that much medical skill he had. After that, everyone's gaze fell unconsciously on Xiao Luing. Too many things were at stake on this operation. The boss hadn't given up on treating the young master, even though he had been scolded for it by his family when he went back for New Year. Shopkeeper Wang was a bit eager for the operation to succeed since he was a man of conscience. However, he also hoped for the operation to fail since to be a man of conscience, one would first have to be alive. A dead man is a ghost. Treating the young master would truly lead to death. Xiao Lulang sat on the chair. He gradually moved his feet, which had just had the stitches removed, to the ground. The crutch was beside him, but he didn't reach out for it. He leaned on the chair and stood up, first using his unharmed left foot. When he stepped forward with his right foot for the first time, he felt a softness beneath his sole, and his entire body lurched forward. Gu Jiao quickly steadied him, and they ended up in a full embrace. They were simply a young couple. No one made a sound even, but Xiao Liulong's ears were burning. Gu Jiao hadn't noticed his peculiarity. All her attention was on his ankle. "Are you all right?" she asked, looking at his ankle. Xiao Lulang shook his head. "I'm fine." He had been injured for half a year and had been using crutches for half a year. His right foot was seldom bearing weight. After all, every time he tried, it caused a heart-wrenching pain. For 3 days Fen Lin stayed in Qingchuan village, sleeping in the same bed with Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao for 3 nights. Apart from her holding his hand on the first night, afterwards, they used their limbs lovingly. Each time Xiao Lulang awoke, he would always discover the two of them cuddled together under the quilt. Xiao Lulang would get angry and ask her, "Did you do this on purpose?" Gu Jiao would gaze at him cluelessly, which made Xiao Lulang unsure for a moment who exactly was cheeky while they slept. Maybe he was the one who led her into his arms. Today was the day Xiao Liulong's stitches would be removed. Technically, Gu Jiao could do it at home, but that risked a higher chance of exposure. Moreover, the old lady had also finished her traditional Chinese medicine, and it was time to get a new batch. Though that prescription was only for supplementary treatment, it significantly improved the recovery process. After breakfast, she took Xiao Lulang and Fen Lin to Huichun Hall in town on Uncle Luo's ox cart. Workers had all gone home for the new year, so only the boss, shopkeeper Wang, and the old doctor who had been impersonating a renowned physician for Xiao Lulang remained in Huichun Hall. These three had made a special trip from home, wanting to see the actual effect after removing the stitches. Even Gu Jiao herself was eager for it. She was certain the operation procedure was flawless, but the final recovery level needed to be seen. The stitches were taken out by the old doctor, that much medical skill he had. After that, everyone's gaze fell unconsciously on Xiao Luing. Too many things were at stake on this operation. The boss hadn't given up on treating the young master, even though he had been scolded for it by his family when he went back for New Year. Shopkeeper Wang was a bit eager for the operation to succeed since he was a man of conscience. However, he also hoped for the operation to fail since to be a man of conscience, one would first have to be alive. A dead man is a ghost. Fall just now wasn't exactly stable, but it seemed like it didn't hurt anymore. Xiao Lulang grabbed his crutch and tried to walk another step. It was confirmed, it really didn't hurt anymore. He was always expressionless, but this time he was somewhat dazed, as if he hadn't expected that he could truly recover to this extent. He had thought that he would limp and suffer for the rest of his life. "Brother Xiao, have you actually gotten better or not?" Fen Lin anxiously asked. I'm not in pain anymore, just a bit powerless, Xiao Lulang said. Fen Lin couldn't help but ask, so, is this a real recovery? Why are you feeling weak? The old doctor slowly said, Young Master Fen, don't worry. Young Master Xiao is not in any pain, which means the surgery was very successful. However, he has been injured for a long time, with obstructed blood and qi, weakness of muscles and bones, and stiffness in the ankle. It still needs careful conditioning, coupled with strenuous training. Can it be restored like to how it was before? Fen Lin asked worriedly. The old doctor glanced subtly at Gu Jiao and smiled. As long as young Master Xiao is not afraid of hard work. The successful operation greatly encouraged the second shopkeeper, and he decided to discuss taking on a new patient with Gu Jiao. Of course, as the matter was of great importance, he could leave out some irrelevant information for now, such as, if the treatment fails, there will be beheadings. However, before he could mention who the prospective patient was, Gu Jiao flatly refused. Why? The second shopkeeper was shocked. Gu Jiao stated without hesitation, it's too far away, I don't do outpatient service. Tell him that if he needs treatment, he should come to Huichun Hall by himself. The second shopkeeper was dumbfounded. The patient was someone who could even invite an imperial doctor to his residence. How could he possibly stoop to visit a small town's medical hall? The second shopkeeper laughed awkwardly. It's not far at all. It's just in a hot spring villa nearby Qingchuan town. Gu Jiao raised an eyebrow. Isn't it far if it's outside of the town? The second shopkeeper was speechless. The second shopkeeper often thought that Gu Jiao was highly capable and certainly not like a village woman. However, at that moment, her complaint about the 20-mile-away hot spring villa far away showed that she was indeed a village woman who had never traveled far. Looking at Gu Jiao somewhat pitifully, the second shopkeeper protested. We agreed you would take a case once a month. Gu Jiao spread out her hands. Yes, I agreed to take a case once a month, not to do an outpatient service once a month. Second shopkeeper. If Miss Gu said no, then it's no. At least we managed to save Huichun Hall from danger. Shopkeeper Wang sighed in relief after learning about Gu Jiao's refusal. The second shopkeeper was at a loss. What do you know? I've already sent out the invitation. Shopkeeper Wang jumped out of shock. Landowner. What did you say? The second shopkeeper coughed lightly and said, I thought she could surely cure young Master Xiao, so I sent the invitation in advance. Everyone in Zhan country knew that the young master of the Marquis' residence was ill. Despite the severe consequences of failing to treat the young master, many doctors still lined up to diagnose him, driven by a heavy reward. If they sent the invitation now, by the time their turn came, the young master might already be gone. Shopkeeper Wang was simply at a loss for words about what to say to the second shopkeeper. Gu Jiao was oblivious to the conversation between the second shopkeeper and shopkeeper Wang. She went to the grand hall to fetch some medicine, and in order to not let anyone see that she was fetching medicines for treating leprosy, she mixed in several other herbs, which she could use to make some wound-healing medicine at home. Fen Lin returned to the academy, while Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang rode Uncle Luo's bullock cart back to the village. Although Xiao Liulang's pain was relieved, he hadn't regained his strength in his right leg and foot yet. He had to rely on a crutch for the time being. Walking with Gu Jiao with the help of his crutch, he saw a horse carriage parked outside their house from a distance. The emblem on the carriage seemed quite familiar. The carriage seemed to have just arrived. The coachman lifted the curtain to help a dignified middle-aged man alight the carriage. Excuse me, is this Xiao Liulang's house? The middle-aged man politely asked outside the gate. That would be me. Xiao Lulang replied indifferently. The middle-aged man turned around and upon seeing Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao, he displayed a kind smile. I am the steward from Tianxiang Academy. My family's old master and the principal asked me to deliver some items here. If the Gu family was here, they would recognize that he was the man who delivered Gu Xiaoshuan's enrollment documents before. He took out a letter from the package and handed it to Xiao Lulang. This is from the principal. He then handed a brocade box to Gu Jiao. This is from our old master for young Master Gu. Upon hearing that Gu Xiaoshun also received something, they guessed who the old master Qi was referring to was. Xiao Lulang took the letter, and Gu Jiao received the brocade box. Gu Jiao said, "Steward Lu, please come in and have a seat." Steward Lu smiled. "Not necessary, I still have things to do, so I'll be leaving now." At this moment, the old woman inside the house called Xiao Lulang, so Xiao Lulang limped in with his crutch. Steward Lu took out a brocade pouch from his bosom and handed it to Gu Jiao. "This is from our old master for Miss Gu." "Why is he giving this to me?" Gu Jiao asked. Steward Lu just smiled and did not respond, and went up the horse carriage to leave. Gu Jiao went back to the room to see the gifts from the old man. The gift for Gu Xiaoshun was a very delicate wolf fur brush, and hers was a piece of warm and smooth mutton fat jade. As her body was cold in nature, wearing the warm jade on her body was almost like sticking a miniature heat pad on herself. Even if Gu Jiao didn't know anything about jade, she could tell that this was a valuable piece of jade. Its value was definitely not lower than Gu Xiaoshun's wolf fur brush. Gu Jiao rested her chin on her hand and murmured, I thought I managed to hide it." So the old man had known it was her all along. Gu Jiao was very pleased with her New Year's gift. She quickly went to see what the principal had sent for Xiao Lulang, only to see Xiao Lulang sitting on the chair, with a dark face, looking as if he wanted to tear something up. "What's wrong?" Gu Jiao peeked around and asked. Xiao Lulang wanted to destroy the unwanted evidence, but Gu Jiao had already come up to him and successfully took the document from his hand. "What's this? It seems to have the official seal of the Yamen on it." Gu Jiao pointed to a character on the document that she had just learned and read aloud. "Test. Is there an examination?" "Yes, the county examination." Damn principal, he had secretly registered him for this month's county examination without his knowledge. He didn't want to take the county examination. "Did you register for it?" Gu Jiao asked. "The principal did." Xiao Lulang, grinding his teeth, replied. This surprised Gu Jiao. "Did the whole class get enrolled?" "Probably not." Xiao Lulang replied. That made sense. Gu Xiaoshun was not among them. Xiao Lulang was notorious in class for being a low achiever. From the time he entered school until the winter vacation, he had never managed to escape from being among the last 3 in all exams. But even with such lousy performance, the exemplary principal did not give up on him. He personally registered him for the county examination. What a great educator he was. The image of the principal in Gu Jiao's mind instantly became towering. "Husband, I think we should visit the principal and give him some gifts." Gu Jiao's eyes sparkled. In her past life, she wanted to bribe her teachers, but no one would do it for her, and her grades were too good that she didn't need to do it anyway. Seeing Xiao Liulang's bad grades, shouldn't they secure a good relationship with the principal as soon as possible? No need. Xiao Lulang refused, and seeing Gu Jiao looking at him in surprise and confusion, he reluctantly turned his head away. "It's too far." Gu Jiao asked, "Where is it?" Xiao Lulang held back his betraying conscience. "Near the hot spring villa, outside the town." Gu Jiao instantly forgot about the event at the medical hall. "Not far, not at all. You just rest at home and recuperate, Xiaoshun, and I will go tomorrow." Xiao Lulang was truly unwilling for Gu Jiao to visit the sly old dean, but this suggestion was unanimously approved by the family members, who happened to be his aunt. "Old lady, a visit is indeed due." Xiao Lulang went back to his room, brooding and bundling himself in his quilt. Gu Jiao was surprised, looking at him. "You are still sleeping with me tonight?" Xiao Lulang felt a surge of embarrassment. "I went to the wrong room." Gu Jiao quirked an eyebrow, her hands nonchalantly crossed over her chest. "You've never gone into the wrong room in half a year of living in the West Chamber, but 3 days in my room and you're lost." Xiao Liulang's earlobes turned red. He muttered defiantly, "I already said, I went to the wrong room." Gu Jiao casually, Xiao Lulang. Gu Jiao was a woman of actions. She prepared the New Year's gifts for bribing the teacher that very night. The next day, when Gu Xiaoshun came over for breakfast and heard that his sister was going to take him to visit the dean near the hot spring villa, he was beyond excited. "I've lived this long and have never been that far from home. I've lived this long but never have my sister taken me out." The truth was, if Gu Jiao didn't bring him, Xiao Lulang would never have allowed a single young woman to travel that far alone. Taking an ox cart just wouldn't work. It's too slow. Who knows if they'll still be on the road when darkness falls. Unfortunately, All the cart shops in town were closed, renting a horse-drawn carriage was impossible. After much consideration, Gu Jiao, with her brother, showed up at Huichun Hall. Facing the sudden appearance of Gu Jiao, the shop owner was somewhat bewildered. "What can I do for Miss Gu?" Gu Jiao unflinchingly said, "I've thought it through. The hot spring villa isn't far, we'll reach there in 1 hour by carriage. Let's set out promptly. You have a carriage, don't you?" Just yesterday, she was self-assured in not making house calls. Why did she change her mind overnight? The shop owner stared incredulously at the bundle in her hands, and at Gu Xiaoshun standing at the door with a large bundle. "You brought another person and so much stuff with you? Is it all for treating the illness?" Gu Jiao shook her head with a smile. "These are New Year gifts for the dean. I forgot to mention, the dean of my husband's academy lives near the hot spring villa. After we examine the patient, I can pay him a visit." The shop owner nearly spurted out his tea. "I think your main intention is to visit the dean and treating the patient is an afterthought. Spinning a free carriage ride as such a noble cause, aren't you ashamed?" Ultimately, the shop owner gave in. The shop owner, Gu Jiao, Gu Xiaoshun, along with the old doctor all got on the carriage. The ride was quite fast. In less than an hour they reached the mansion near the hot springs villa. A tall plaque at the entrance read Lung Residence. This should be the dean's alternate residence. As the story goes, the dean used to hold an official post in the capital city. It was only after his mother fell seriously ill that he resigned and left the city, purchasing a property here for his mother to spend the rest of her years. Gu Jiao brought Gu Xiaoshan off the carriage and knocked on the sealed gate of the courtyard. Shortly, a servant opened the door for them. Upon seeing these two shabbily dressed country folks, he didn't show any disdain but politely asked, "May I ask who you are?" Gu Jiao responded, "My husband and my brother are students at Tianxiang Academy. We've come especially to visit the dean." "Oh." The servant appeared shocked. "What's happening?" An elderly voice came from within the mansion. The servant quickly responded, "It's the master's students, madam." The old woman spoke in a bit of a dazed voice. "Well then, invite them in quickly. It's freezing outside, let them come in and have some hot tea." Gu Jiao didn't know the dean personally, but the attitudes of his family and the servants were quite comforting. The servant opened the gate and said, "Please come in with me. The master has gone out fishing and might be back soon, or he could be out until nightfall. The lady who was talking just now is my master's mother." The servant led them to meet the old Madame Leng, but when they arrived at her bedside, she was already sleeping soundly. Madame Leng was already in her twilight years, much like a baby, waking and sleeping unpredictably throughout the day. "You two can sit in the tea room for a while, I'll bring you some tea." The servant took Gu Jiao and Gu Xiaoshun to the tea room. With attentive hospitality, he served tea and lit the brazier, treating them with utmost respect regardless of their humble status. After sitting for a while, Gu Jiao estimated that the dean wouldn't be back so soon and Madame Leng wouldn't wake up that quickly, so she told the servant that she would go find the dean herself. The fishing spot wasn't too far. The servant gave her directions. "I want to go too," Gu Xiaoshun said. Gu Jiao coaxed him. "If Madame Leng wakes up and finds that both of us are not here, she might think we were disrespectful." "Oh." Gu Xiaoshun obediently stayed back. Once outside the mansion, Gu Jiao got back into the shop owner's carriage. "I thought you would be a while." The shop owner said. "The dean isn't in." Gu Jiao asked, "Where is the patient you told me about?" "Ah, over there." The shop owner gestured towards a small path leading straight to the Green Mountain. At the foot of the mountain was a beautifully landscaped mansion amidst various other dwellings. It was the famous Marquis residence's hot spring villa. The shop owner didn't introduce much about the patient, only mentioned he was the young son of a certain Marquis from the capital city. He had been born prematurely and had been feeble since birth. They searched for renowned doctors for years, but his condition didn't improve. "That young lord is about your age. Rumors say he won't live to see 15, the shop owner said regretfully. "Does that mean he only has a year left?" Gu Jiao was 14 this year. "Yes, but he might not even make it to June." "Is his condition really that serious?" The shop owner sighed and nodded. "Yes, poor Marchioness, she only has this one son. Although the young master had an elder twin sister, it didn't compensate for the pain of losing a son. The shop owner didn't tell Gu Jiao much more that was unrelated to the condition. As they talked, the carriage arrived at the entrance to the Hot Springs Villa. A huge archway stood with the words Hot Springs Villa written in golden letters, and a smaller column of cursive script on the right read, Marquis Residence. Everyone alighted from the carriage. Gu Jiao stood under the grand archway, feeling as insignificant as a rabbit. Even this, just a villa of the Marquis, was grandly magnificent. The shop owner had passed by the villa many times, but this was his first time actually coming in. Honestly, the sheer grandiosity of the entrance stunned him. Of course, he didn't know that Gu Jiao was blankly staring at the arch not because she was awestruck, but was simply wondering if the gold on it was real.